Chapter 721, Fortunes Reversed. What's this? I'm alive again! Juzo glanced at his own body in surprise before noticing others around him. His eyes widened as he realized, Is this Konoha's Edo Tensei Jutsu? That bastard Kakuzu, he fucking stabbed me in the back. Kaminari seethed in rage once he realized that he was revived. He wanted to do nothing more than get his revenge. Unfortunately, he knew that he was nothing but a puppet under the control of the one who reanimated him. Zabuza-sama, is that you? Where are we? How am I alive again? Haku asked curiously. Unlike the other experienced ninjas, he knew nothing about this jutsu. Zabuza replied, You aren't. Someone used a jutsu to bring back the dead temporarily. We'll be under that person's control. A sad look appeared on Haku's face as he muttered, Does that mean that you're dead as well? I failed in my duty. To his surprise, Zabuza chuckled and said, Don't beat yourself up. You did very well, Haku. Anyway, we seem to be in Konoha and in the midst of a war. Juzo glanced at Zabuza and noticed Kubikirabacha with him. He said, Zabuza, so you are the one who succeeded my blade. However, it looks like you have fallen as well. Zabuza looked at Juzo as well. Before he could say anything, Kaminari began hurling another round of creative curses at Kakuzu. He suddenly stopped when his eyes fell on Fujin. He said, He looks a bit familiar. Who is he? Juzo overheard him and replied, He is Suzuki Fujin. I heard that you clashed with him before you died. Kaminari's eyes widened in surprise. He exclaimed, The brat has grown so much. Not bad, as expected of someone who could injure me. How did you die, Juzo? Juzo sighed and answered, I was killed by that brat. What? Kaminari shouted in surprise. While he was impressed by Fujin's chakra, he didn't think he'd be able to kill someone like Juzo at such a young age. While the reanimated ninjas chatted a bit among themselves, the last reanimated ninja's appearance became clear. As soon as they saw him, fear appeared in the eyes of both Suna and Konoha ninjas. Fujin's expression became serious as well as he thought, Hadek Sakumo! Sigh, such a difficult opponent. Even if he isn't at his full strength, sealing him will be a difficult job. Long time no see, Saru. You've aged, Sarutobi. As soon as they were reanimated, the Senju brothers noticed how old Hiruzen had become. Hiruzen sighed and apologized. I never imagined I would see you two again under such circumstances. I am so sorry. Hiruzen quickly assessed the situation. So much for that hope. Their chakra levels are far lower than when they were alive, especially in the case of Lord First. They won't be able to break free of Orochimaru's control. However, they should still have the strength of a rank S ninja along with their skills. I might be able to take the three of them on at the same time, but this will be a difficult battle. Very difficult. It might have been a bit easier if Jiraiya and Fujin backed me up. However, I sensed Sakumo's presence along with Shiragene's chakra. They won't be able to free themselves easily. Tabarama glanced at Orochimaru and said, Edo Tensei, huh? And that stripling over there is the one who summoned us with my jutsu? Impressive. He has improved this jutsu considerably. Huh! Tabarama's eyes suddenly widened as he felt something. He glanced outside the barrier, looking into the arena first before glancing in the direction of the village. He thought, I can't see them. However, why do I feel like there are millions of flying thunder god marks in the village? Did someone improve that jutsu as well? When Hiruzen gave Fujin the flying thunder god scrolls, he had given Fujin everything related to it. The aspect of hiding the flying thunder god mark was developed by Minato. While Tabarama's marks could be sensed by anyone who had some expertise in space-time ninjutsu, Minato's marks couldn't be sensed even by such ninjas unless he wanted to show them. In order to ensure that reanimated Tabarama and Minato wouldn't be able to see his marks, Fujin changed the seal formula even further. It wasn't exactly an improvement on Minato's formula, but just a change to ensure that Minato couldn't see his marks either. However, since he had planted millions of marks in Konoha, Tabarama, who was extremely skilled at space-time ninjutsu and probably the ninja who knew the most about it, instinctively felt the presence of an enormous number of flying thunder god marks. Tabarama looked back at Hiruzen and asked, Saru, did someone master the flying thunder god jutsu as well? Hiruzen was a bit surprised by the question. He answered, yes, he was quite a genius with the technique as well and became the fourth Hokage. Unfortunately, he passed away over a decade ago. Tabarama sighed and thought, a pity. Someone who could change my seal formula and plant millions of marks in the village must have been a very formidable ninja. Attacking the village would have been impossible if he was still alive. Orochimaru chuckled and said, enough with the small talk. Why don't we get started? In the arena, the ninjas on both sides were in shock at seeing Sakumo. Fearful voices could be heard among the ranks of Konoha ninjas. That bitch summoned Sakumo-sama. Wasn't Sakumo-sama stronger than the Sanins? How are we supposed to fight him? We need to trust Councilman Fujin. Let's block the others with our lives and let Councilman Fujin deal with Sakumo-sama by himself. At the same time, hateful voices could be heard among the ranks of Suna ninjas. That is Konoha's White Fang. Why did Orochimaru revive that cursed bastard? He killed both my grandparents. Screw you! He killed all 4 of my grandparents and both my parents. Stop talking! That bastard almost annihilated my entire clan. Do you know how often I dreamed that I could kill this motherfucker? While Sakumo's strength was always known, he gained fame during the Second Great Ninja War when he led Konoha's armies on the Suna front. The wounds he inflicted on Sunagakure were worse than what Fujin inflicted on Kumagakure. Unlike Fujin, who did it stealthily and without any witnesses, Sakumo did it in front of everyone on the battlefield. For over a decade, there wasn't a single person in Sunagakure who didn't hate him. Kakashi and others glanced in the direction of this commotion as well. It was too big to ignore. His eyes widened as he muttered, "Father!" He looked back at Kabuto and said, "Edo Tensei." So that is the weird feeling I was getting. However, who killed you, Kabuto? Having faced Kabuto, Kakashi knew how formidable he was. Seeing that he had suddenly died caught him off guard. Of course, the one who was caught off guard most was none other than Kabuto. He wondered, what in the hell? It doesn't seem like he is lying. In fact, he has no reason to lie. What is going on? Who killed me? And who can use Chidori as well as Kakashi? Kabuto immediately felt like he was on the verge of finding out about a great conspiracy. He racked his brain to figure out what it was while continuing to restrict Kakashi. Sakumo glanced at the headband Guren was wearing and the Odo ninjas around her before glancing at Fujin. Seeing the wind cloak around him, Sakumo immediately concluded that all the Odo ninjas had been killed by Fujin. He sighed, to think that I would be revived to fight my own village. You, what is your name? Fujin replied, I didn't expect to see a ninja of your caliber in the enemy ranks. I'm Suzuki Fujin. Sakumo said, Fujin, good name. Even though I'm revived, I can feel that I'm not at my full strength. However, you can't kill someone who has been summoned by the Edo Tensei Jutsu. This jutsu can only be stopped by either sealing us or by putting the caster under a genjutsu and dispelling the jutsu. Call for a few Uchiha Jounins and have them suppress her. The eyes of Konoha ninjas widened while the Suna ninjas smirked. The famed Uchiha clan no longer existed. The only ones who lived were Sasuke and a few academy students. The only 2 strong Uchiha were rogue ninjas. Even though they hated Sakumo, seeing him on their side raised the morale of the Suna ninjas. Just a minute ago, Fujin was ruthlessly butchering Suna and Odo ninjas. Now it would be Konoha's turn to suffer. Before the Konoha ninjas could say that there was no Uchiha Jounin in the village and ask Sakumo to give a different advice, Guren shouted, Stop stalling time and attack him! Kill Fujin before he is reinforced and annihilate the remaining Konoha ninjas. Chapter 722, Fujin's Decisiveness. Stop stalling time and attack him! Kill Fujin before he is reinforced! Immediately, 5 of the 6 reanimated ninjas rushed at Fujin. Only Sakumo stood in his spot, trying his best to resist the order. Ice needles appeared between Haku's fingers as he said, My body! Zabuza-sama, my mind is clear, but my body is moving on its own. Zabuza frowned while gripping his Kubikirabacho tighter. He replied, That's what this jutsu does. It forces us to fight as per the wishes of our summoner even if it is against our will. As he approached Fujin, Juzo, wielding a large black sword that reminded Fujin of Darui's sword, said, To think I'd get a rematch with you under such circumstances. It wasn't what I wished, but here I come. Unlike him, Kaminari laughed while conducting lightning through his sword made of chakra metal. He shouted, I'll first kill you before taking revenge on Kakuzu. It was due to you that Kakuzu got an opening to attack me. As for the last person, he was awfully quiet until this point and didn't carry any weapon. Strangely, he was also the fastest one to move. When he was just a couple of meters away from Fujin, a wide grin appeared on his face. Several sharp bones popped out of his body as he exclaimed in ecstasy, To think I could battle even after my death! Haha, this is marvelous! The eyes of the Konoha ninjas widened. A couple of veteran ninjas shouted, Fujin, please stay away from him. He was the clan leader of the Kaguya clan and a rank S ninja. Don't let him get close to you. From the barrier, Orochimaru glanced at the arena and thought with a smirk. According to my original plan, I would have let Rasa deal with Fujin. Kimimaro would have assassinated whoever won. I predicted that Shikaku would make Jiraiya stay in the Hokage building to deal with me and later send him to deal with my summons. I would have sent Guren along with the reanimated ninjas to take care of him. Unfortunately, Rasa's sudden change of heart disrupted my plans. Luckily, my summons can keep Jiraiya occupied for a while. Even if he comes here immediately, my next move will be enough to make the battle unsalvageable for Konoha. The three Hokages began their battle, while Fujin looked at 5 strong and unkillable ninjas coming at him with the intention to kill. Shiragene's bones extended towards Fujin and touched his wind cloak. At that very moment, Shiragane and the eyes of the other 4 reanimated ninjas widened. Before any of them could react, all 5 were hit by intense winds and launched back like cannonballs at an even faster speed. The eyes of all onlookers widened as they guarded against the intense wind current flowing from the wind cloak in every direction. Before they could stabilize themselves, another intense wind current was blasted behind Fujin, sending any unlucky ninja in its path flying for several dozen meters. As for Fujin, he appeared in front of Sakumo in the blink of an eye and swung his sword straight at Sakumo's throat. Lightning coursed through Sakumo's body, increasing his speed tremendously and allowing him to keep up with Fujin's speed. He unsheathed a white tanto and swung it at Fujin's sword in one smooth movement. Lightning circulated through it as well, causing it to release a white light. As their blade drew closer to each other, Fujin thought, "The white fang, huh? A shame that he isn't at his full strength and the circumstances don't allow me to have some fun. Otherwise, it would have been a very fun duel. In addition, his tanto is very good too. It is at least as good as my case kiri, if not even better. If I didn't have the Kiba blades, I'd be tempted to steal his sword. It looks like Orochimaru has left no stone unturned to ensure the success of his assault." Everyone watched in anticipation as the blades of 2 extremely strong ninjas were about to clash. However, just when their blades were mere inches from each other, strong winds blasted towards Fujin's right side, hurling him to his left. Surprise appeared on Sakumo's face as his blade cut through thin air. Before Sakumo could make sense of the situation, strong winds were blasted from the wind cloak as Fujin used the assassin's rush jutsu once again. The eyes of every ninja who heard Sakumo's words earlier widened in shock as Fujin appeared right in front of Gyuren, his blade about to behead her. Gyuren was shocked. She didn't think that Fujin would try to kill her. She instinctively covered her entire body in crystal just before Fujin's blade could hit her neck. Unfortunately for her, a vacuum core formed along the edge of the Keiskiri as it sliced through her crystal armor like a hot knife through butter. Her head flew off her shoulders and landed a few meters away. Shock could still be seen in her eyes as her head rolled some distance before finally stopping. For a moment, the entire battlefield grew quiet. Everyone looked at Fujin with a dumbfounded expression. After what Sakumo said, not a single person thought Fujin would do the exact opposite. Even someone as calm and easygoing as Sakumo lost his cool for a moment. He angrily asked, "Did you hear a word I said? How will you stop us now?" The very moment Gyuren's head rolled, Kabuto glanced in her direction and cursed, "Shit!" Kakashi took advantage of his momentary distractions and lightning chains ravaged Kabuto's body. He was about to attack again when several Konoha ninjas appeared and said, "Kakashi-san will handle him. You please assist Councilman Fujin." Kakashi stopped and said, "Be careful, he is very strong and cunning. Wait for the sealing team to arrive." To Sakumo's surprise, there wasn't a change in Fujin's expression. He calmly replied, "The Uchiha clan was almost entirely massacred. There are no Uchiha Jounins in the village." Sakumo's eyes widened and disbelief appeared in his eyes. He muttered, "The Uchiha clan was massacred." Kaguya Shirogane began laughing as he got up. He exclaimed, "That pesky clan has no more Jounins. That's good. It should have been massacred entirely." Considering that he led his own clan to their annihilation, everyone ignored the madman. Fujin continued, "Even if there were any Uchiha Jounins here, I won't let a ninja who can reanimate dead ninjas like you stay alive on the battlefield. Besides, without her no one can order you, so help me defeat and seal the rest of them." As soon as he said it, Shirogane's laughter died in an instant. A grim expression appeared on Kaminari's face as well. Both looked at Sakumo, neither wanting to face that monster. At the same time, hope appeared in the eyes of Konoha ninjas, while the Suna ninjas were even more terrified. Having already suffered disastrously at the hands of Fujin, they had no will to face Sakumo at the same time. A few individuals flickered next to Fujin. Kakashi looked at Sakumo and muttered, "Father!" Sakumo had already sensed Kakashi's presence. To see him even in this condition was a pleasant surprise. However, before he could talk with his son, he shouted, "Be careful!" He unleashed several lightning rays at Fujin's group, which were immediately intercepted by Fujin's air bullets. Sakumo said, "I'm still not in control of my body." Fujin sighed and muttered, "As I suspected, that woman wasn't the true user of the Edo Tensei Jutsu. The real one must be." Fujin glanced in the direction of the barrier. An intense battle was taking place inside. However, Orochimaru was looking hatefully in Fujin's direction. He cursed, "Fuck, that brat! I didn't expect that he'd be so decisive." Orochimaru flickered to dodge Hiruzen's jutsu as he thought. Even though I have improved the second Hokage Edo Tensei jutsu considerably, this jutsu still has a lot of limitations. I still can't revive the ninjas at their full strength. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The bigger issue is distance. My control weakens considerably as the distance between me and the reanimated ninjas increases. For the time being, I can only keep 2 rank S ninjas under my control when they are away from me. I can control a few more elite jounins at the same time, but if I add a 3rd rank S ninja, all 3 will break out of my control. Orochimaru frowned as he continued thinking. Even though Sakumo and Shirogane are strong, they wouldn't be able to defeat the Konoha ninjas led by Fujin and Jiraiya. Their job was more to whittle them down. By the time they sealed these 6 ninjas, Gurren would have summoned another 6 ninjas and attacked them when they were exhausted. However, I never anticipated that someone would just kill Gurren. Even after the complicated set of hand seals, I gave her to fool everyone into thinking that she was the real summoner. Orochimaru flickered once again as a water jet and a fireball clashed at the spot he was standing in. As he analyzed the situation, Orochimaru realized how the battle would play out. A grin appeared on his face as he suddenly began laughing. He thought, "It looks like the battle outside is a lost cause. To think that I'd lose even after putting in so much effort. No matter, I still have a couple of cards left. Even though I lost this battle, I'll be the final victor in this war." Chapter 723, One Jutsu to Suppress Them All. Sakumo unleashed over 100 rays of lightning which approached Fujin's group from different directions as he warned loudly, "Be careful. I can feel that my body is programmed to focus on killing you, Fujin. If you fall, my blade will turn towards other Konoha ninjas. Anyone who gets in my way will be attacked as well. I will try to resist as much as I can, but prepare yourself." Fujin's wind cloak transformed into winds and intercepted the lightning rays. At the same time, it recreated the wind domain around him. The remaining reanimated ninjas, who were charging towards Fujin's group, immediately stopped and retreated before the winds could engulf them. Kaminari questioned, "What are those winds?" Haku wondered aloud, "Can he control the winds in that dome? That's incredible. I have never seen anyone use wind release in this manner." Zabuza, Juzo, Shirogane, and Sakumo looked in surprise as well. Despite spending years on the battlefield fighting all kinds of ninjas, none of them had seen anything like that. At the center of the wind domain, Guy asked, "What do we do now? Should I use?" He was cut off by Renjiro, who replied, "The 8 inner gates technique is too risky against the Edo Tensei. Even if their bodies are destroyed, they will reform. It'll depend on whether they can be sealed before they reform. Fujin, you should be able to seal them, right?" Once they were destroyed, sealing a reanimated ninja wasn't a difficult job. Even seal masters could do so if they had learnt the appropriate sealing methods. As a grandmaster, Fujin obviously could do it as well. In fact, he had several methods to do so. Fujin nodded and replied, "Sealing them wouldn't be an issue. However, it'll be better to save your technique for later in case Orochimaru has other arrangements. At the very least, don't open the ladder gates which would slow you down." Guy nodded. While their enemy was strong, the situation wasn't bad enough to take huge risks. Considering Orochimaru's methods, Fujin's words seemed appropriate. Hoka, the last person in their group, activated his Byakugan and asked, "So how do we deal with them?" Kakashi replied, "Fighting them together will be troublesome. Due to their bodies, they won't be concerned with friendly fire. We won't have that luxury and could be put in a difficult situation." Renjiro added, "That is correct. The best way to deal with them would be to split them up." Fujin agreed as well and said, "All right, I'll use winds to split them up. Which opponents do you guys want?" Kakashi was the first one to reply, "I'll take on my father." Without missing a beat, Fujin questioned, "You sure? We won't be able to back you up if things go wrong." Needless to say, Fujin wanted to take Sakumo on. As per his initial calculation, Guy, Kakashi, Renjiro, and Hoka would take on Shirogane, Kaminari, Juzo, and Zabuza respectively, while a Jounin restricted Haku. Once he sealed Sakumo, Fujin could team up with others to seal everyone up one by one. However, Kakashi replied resolutely, "I am. Father isn't as strong as he was when he was alive. In addition, he is resisting Orochimaru's control. I can restrain him." Even though Kakashi spent the month training Sasuke, he also started to take his own training more seriously after his encounter with Kabuto. At the same time, he wanted to take this chance to talk with his father. Everyone understood it, and hence no one opposed Kakashi. Fujin glanced at others and asked, "Well, what about you guys?" Guy was about to answer when his eyes widened and he shouted, "Careful!" Even though the appearance of the wind domain surprised them, it didn't intimidate them enough to stop them from making a move. In fact, with their immortal bodies, they didn't particularly fear wind jutsus as much as the living. Seeing the Konoha ninjas planning, all 6 reanimated ninjas riled their chakra and attacked. Lightning Release, False Darkness Jutsu, Water Release, Great Waterfall Jutsu, Water Release, Exploding Water Wave Jutsu, Lightning Release, Lightning Storm Jutsu. Kaminari, Juzo, Zabuza, and Sakumo attacked with supercharged long-range jutsus to see what the wind domain could do. Haku attacked at the same time and launched hundreds of ice needles into the domain. As for Shirogane, he directly rushed into the domain without any regard for the domain. Kakashi and others were about to act when Fujin said, "It's fine, they can't break my technique this easily. Which ones will you take on?" Kakashi, Guy, Renjiro, and Hoka looked at Fujin in surprise. Any single attack would force them to take evasive action or use a defensive jutsu. Not to mention, the former Kaguya clan leader was running straight at them. However, Fujin didn't even give them a second glance. Kaminari's massive lightning spears pierced into the wind domain and moved towards Fujin's group from the back. In front of them, a lightning storm had appeared and clashed with the wind domain. A young Konoha Chunin exclaimed in shock. He used a wind and lightning combination jutsu so effortlessly. Even Fujin was impressed with Sakumo's display. It was his first time seeing someone use lightning and wind together so flawlessly. Despite that, the ones who were surprised were Sakumo and Kaminari. Several wind blades appeared out of thin air and bombarded the lightning spears. Not even a spark reached Fujin and the rest. As for the lightning storm, it slowed down as soon as it clashed with the wind domain. The winds from the wind domain infiltrated into the storm and moved in the opposite direction at a rapid speed, nullifying it entirely within seconds. Asuna Ninja muttered in disbelief. "What the hell? How did that massive lightning storm disappear so suddenly? Did White Fang stop his own jutsu?" The ninja next to him said. "Forget that. Look at the insane number of wind blades that appeared out of thin air. I now understand how an entire division suddenly dropped dead. That region is a death zone." Unlike the weaker ninjas, Baki had a grave expression. He thought, his control over wind is ridiculous. To think that massive combination jutsu would be neutralized this easily. That wind technique is troublesome. In fact, it is stronger than every wind jutsu in Sunagakuya. Considering that Sunagakuya was supposed to have the best users of wind release, Fujin's display was quite humiliating for the Sunagakuya ninjas. However, most of them didn't register that as they were more concerned about whether they'd make it out alive. While the lightning storm was being neutralized, Juzo's and Zabuza's jutsus hit the wind domain. However, strong winds were suddenly unleashed in the opposite direction from the wind domain. The water flow was stopped before being sent back in their direction. At the same time, hundreds of mini wind blades appeared in the wind domain and blocked every ice needle Haku launched. Just when the 5 jutsus had been stopped, Shirogane entered the wind domain boldly. A bone armor appeared under his skin as he noticed the wind blades blocking other jutsus. As soon as he entered the wind domain, hundreds of cuts appeared on his body, stripping his body of nearly all his skin. Even so, Shirogane laughed loudly and continued moving forward. Hundreds of cuts appeared on his bones, but none managed to pierce through. Only some scars were left, but they couldn't slow him down. However, his laughter suddenly stopped as a giant palm made of winds formed around him and stopped him. In the blink of an eye, he was pinned to the ground. While Fujin dealt with the attacks, everyone quickly began deciding their opponents. Guy said, "I'll take the Kaguya." However, Renjiro said, "No, I'll take on Shirogane. I had fought against him during the previous war. I won't have much difficulty in restricting him for a while. You take on Zabuza. Unlike me, you should be able to suppress him easily. Hoka, take on the ice user." Guy and Hoka agreed. Fujin glanced at Juzo and Kaminari and thought, "So, time to face these two again, huh? Well, it should be interesting. It'll allow me to see how far I have come." Renjiro continued, "You'll have to take on those two, Fujin." Fujin replied, "All right." While they planned, the onlookers were shocked. Asuna Ninja dropped his kana and questioned in disbelief. Did he just suppress all 6 of them alone? A Konoha ninja exclaimed, "Holy crap, Fujin is cool. Look how he is holding down that Kaguya ninja." Another asked, "Didn't you say that he was a rank S ninja? Look how helpless he is against Councilman Fujin." The older Konoha ninjas were just left speechless. They recalled how they tried to warn Fujin earlier, and now Fujin was holding him down without even glancing at him. Baki gulped his saliva nervously as well. With a grim expression, he thought, "Impossible!" He blocked the full power attacks of a rank S ninja, 3 elite Jounins, and a Kekkei Genkai wielder, and suppressed another rank S ninja with the same technique. How is this technique so powerful? How can we even counter it? Chapter 724, Poking the Beehive. For a few moments, Baki felt a sense of helplessness. He didn't see any way to counter such a strong jutsu. In fact, he wasn't even sure whether Rasa could stop this technique. The fact that the enemy village had a 16-year-old ninja who could go up against their cage and possibly overpower him was extremely difficult for Baki to digest. Yet, Baki quickly controlled himself. As the Sunagakure ninja with the highest authority on the battlefield, he wasn't allowed to lose control of his emotions like the rest. He quickly analyzed, no, a jutsu this strong has to have weaknesses, and the weakness of this jutsu is rather obvious. Sustaining it will take a massive toll on his chakra reserves. While we can't confront him head-on, we can keep attacking him until he runs out of chakra and then take his head. However, it'll be a very painful victory. It'll be best if they are able to kill him right here. Baki's analysis wasn't off the mark. The wind domain had a ridiculous requirement for chakra. A normal ninja wouldn't be able to sustain it. After creating the wind domain, Fujin used it to annihilate a division of Suna ninjas and a division of Odo ninjas. In addition, he lost a big chunk of chakra to Kuragaki's dark release. Along with his liberal use of the assassin's rush jutsu and blocking the reanimated ninjas, his wind domain was almost out of chakra. It became quite evident when Shiragene's bones ripped through Fujin's ghost palm. Baki observed it with a keen look and thought, as I suspected, the technique's power had decreased significantly. Even though he is still ridiculously strong, he won't be invincible once this technique ends. The reanimated ninjas and others around, especially the censors, also noticed the same thing. Sakumo sighed internally while thinking, I guess expecting a jutsu of this scale to be sustained for too long is too much. However, unlike the expressions of the Konoha ninjas, there wasn't even a hint of worry on Fujin's face. The wind domain began moving once again, and strong winds were blasted in the direction of all 6 ninjas once again. The sudden move from the weakening wind domain caught them off guard, and all 6 ninjas were hurled a long distance backwards. With this attack, Fujin's wind domain finally ran out of chakra as well. Without exchanging a single word, everyone in Fujin's group flickered towards the opponents they decided upon. Baki immediately realized, that technique has run out of chakra. This is our chance. He quickly glanced towards 3 Suna jounins, all of whom glanced back at him at that moment. Without the need for any orders, they nodded and flickered. The 3 Suna ninjas specialized in assassination. In a head-on battle, they knew that they didn't stand any chance against Fujin. However, with the reanimated ninjas keeping him busy, they were confident that they would get some openings. Fujin appeared in front of Juzo and Kaminari and thought, more than 300 elite ninjas for 25% of my chakra. Not a bad exchange. That said, fighting these 2 and later sealing the rest. My chakra reserves can go seriously low, and depending on the situation, I may have to fight with Orochimaru as well. Worse, he might have more dead people to summon. Kaminari looked at Fujin and chuckled. Aren't you looking down at us, boy? You want to take the 2 of us at the same time without that cloak? Juzo said. If we were still alive, I'd have warned him to not underestimate you. However, I suppose it doesn't matter now. How long has it been since you killed me? Fujin raised an eyebrow and asked, Kill you? We never even met. Juzo was immediately left speechless. Kaminari looked at Fujin in confusion and wondered, why is he denying it? Juzo, who lived a few years longer than Kaminari, understood why Fujin denied it. He couldn't help but wonder, how much shit did he do to refuse his identity completely? I suppose even Konoha can't handle the backlash if he accepts it openly. Still, this is humiliating. I never imagined that someone would refuse to even accept that they killed me, a former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Does my head command no value? Fujin's words made Juzo angry, but Fujin ignored him and glanced at Kaminari. He said, For someone who's being controlled like a puppet by Orochimaru, you sure are cocky. I wonder what your old comrades in Kumo would think if they knew how proud you are to be his attack dog. Fujin's remark immediately made Kaminari lose his cool. Never had he been insulted to this degree. He immediately riled up his chakra and was about to curse and attack when his eyes widened. Taking advantage of the fraction of a second Kaminari lost himself to rage, Fujin flickered in front of him and swung his blade at him. Unlike his usual approach, Fujin didn't target his throat. After all, it was useless against an Edo Tensei, and Fujin didn't want to leave himself open for a counterattack. Instead, he attacked Kaminari's sword, which he instinctively raised. The 2 blades clashed. Lightning flowed through Kaminari's blade, making it far stronger than a normal sword. However, it was too weak against the vacuum core along Fujin's blade. In one smooth motion, Fujin cut Kaminari's sword into 2 and continued swinging his sword towards his chest. However, he suddenly stopped and retreated as several water bullets flew through his previous location. Juzo appeared next to Kaminari and mocked ruthlessly. What a surprise! Even death failed to tone down your arrogance. Kaminari snorted and said, He just caught me off guard. His chakra flared once again, and lightning charges appeared on his body. Having realized how devious Fujin was, and recalling how he was played twice by Fujin's squad before his death, he no longer intended to give him any opportunities. All three disappeared, and an intense clash ensued. At the same time, others began their battles as well. While the most crucial battles were happening in the arena, the rest of the village was in chaos as well. Shikaku dispatched several powerful ninjas to take care of the gigantic snakes and lead the ninjas on the walls to victory against the Suna and Odo ninjas. He had already sent Jirya, who had already crushed one group and was moving towards the second. Inoichi, Choza, Tsum, Eagle, and a few others were also dispatched to stop the summons. However, one group managed to break through the ninjas stationed at the wall. With no one living near the walls, they rushed straight towards the village, intending to cause as much harm to Konoha as possible. In a couple of minutes, they reached the outskirts of the village. In a dark basement, a pair of eyes suddenly opened. He got up and muttered, "Seriously, you have the entire village and you come this fucking way?" In Fujin's compound, there was a bit of panic. Over 100 former Kiri orphans, who were currently Ambu trainees, watched 3 large snakes along with a couple of dozen enemy ninjas heading straight towards them. Hikari muttered fearfully, "They are heading towards us. I have never seen such gigantic snakes." Takeshi said, "Calm down. Sensei has trained us for a long time. We can't disappoint him. With our Kekkei Genkai, we can take those gigantic snakes down." Sayaka immediately said with full seriousness, "Don't get overconfident. These snakes are Orochimaru's summons. We can't take them lightly." Yuji chuckled and said, "Don't worry, when has Takeshi ever taken anyone lightly?" Sayaka looked at him and scolded, "I'm worried more about you, Yuji." She turned her gaze towards their Ambu instructors and said, "Don't worry, our instructors are still here. Even if Sensei isn't here, they can instruct us how to deal with them." Everyone nodded obediently. Unknown to them, Monkey had a worried expression behind his mask. He thought, "We don't have enough manpower to face them. The only way we'd have any chance at victory is if I make the trainees fight. However, this is very risky. Even though they have a couple of years of training, they have never been on an actual mission. If I make them fight here, many would die. Considering their immense potential, this will be a painful loss for the village. However, what other choice do I have?" "Huh?" In shock, Monkey asked, "What are you doing here?" Fujin's clone asked in return, "Why are you so agitated? Calm down, I'm just a shadow clone." Monkey sighed in relief and said, "Thankfully you're here. I was getting worried about sending the trainees to battle. Even though you're just a clone, our losses will be significantly lower. What's the issue?" He suddenly felt uncomfortable as he saw Fujin's clone looking at him like he was the biggest idiot in the world. Fujin's clone turned his gaze back towards the enemy and asked, "What do you mean by losses?" Chapter 725, Unexpected Casualties of the War. "Shikaku-sama, one group of enemies have broken through and are heading towards the village." Yamanaka Shin opened his eyes and reported with a grim expression. Several Yamanaka ninjas in the room had grim expressions as well. They were responsible for sensing the position of enemy ninjas. A group entering the village meant that there would be a lot of death and destruction. Shikaku wasn't too disturbed. He had already calculated that this would happen as a couple of spots hadn't been protected that well and had long made arrangements for both spots. He asked, "Which group is it, the 3rd or the 7th? Yamanaka Shin replied, "It's the 7th group. They are about to reach the 23rd training ground and will reach Fujin's compound soon. There are 3 giant snakes and 26 ninjas in their group." Worry could be seen on Shin's face. Even though he hadn't interacted with Fujin much, he had taught him the basics of sensing when Fujin was still in the academy. He didn't want to see his house and compound being destroyed. However, to his surprise, he saw a smile appear on Shikaku's face. He wondered, what the hell? Was it a trap prepared by Shikaku-sama? Shikaku ordered, "Dispatch 4 ambush squads to intercept them." For a moment, Shin couldn't believe his ears. He asked to confirm, "Only 4 squads?" Shikaku plainly nodded and said, "Yeah, it should be more than enough. Now go." Shin left immediately while Shikaku thought, "I left that group as the last one to be dealt with because of what stands in that direction. To think that they would run straight to it. Poor souls." Despite being enemies, Shikaku couldn't help but feel bad for them. By now, every strong ninja in Konoha knew that Fujin's compounds were the last place to mess around. Even someone as lazy as Shikaku wanted to witness that battle. Unfortunately, he couldn't move around freely. "What do you mean by losses?" Fujin's clone asked while looking at the giant snakes. Monkey was dumbfounded. He wondered, is he saying that we can win without taking any loss? But how? Does his clone have enough chakra to deal with them? Banjiro and Tatsuya flickered behind Fujin and said, "Fujin, we're here. What should we do?" Fujin's clone replied, "Just watch and learn what you should never do on any battlefield or mission." Both were confused. Just like Monkey, they were preparing themselves for a difficult battle. However, the way Fujin's clone spoke was very casual. It was as if he didn't consider the incoming enemy a threat. Even though they were confused, they just decided to put their trust in him. After all, if Fujin was so confident, then there was no reason for them to be worried. The giant snakes entered the training ground while the Suna and Oto ninjas followed them. Fear appeared in their eyes as they finally saw Fujin's clone standing on top of his house. Why is the spectral swordsman here? Wasn't he supposed to be in the arena? Fool, he is in the arena. This one should be his clone, or maybe someone transformed into him. Stop being cowards and crush his compounds. Hearing the Jounin's words, everyone calmed down and confidence appeared in their eyes. An Oto ninja shouted, "If he is only a clone, then we don't need to worry. Orochimaru-sama's summons will crush him." As if following his command, the three gigantic snakes opened their mouths wide and dived straight at the compound, wanting to swallow everyone inside it. Seeing the massive snakes, the young trainees became fearful. Thankfully, they were trained enough not to cause chaos. Even so, almost all the trainees retreated backwards. Several weaved hand seals and prepared jutsus in case the snakes weren't stopped. Sayaka and other students of Fujin glanced at him and wondered, what is he doing? Why hasn't Sensei cut them up already? Even though he's just a clone, this should be child's play for him, shouldn't it? Seeing the young kid's fright, the confidence of the Suna and Oto ninjas soared. They weaved hand seals while shouting, "Crush them! We will continue until the entire Konoha is destroyed." Their words got stuck in their throats and their eyes widened in shock. A massive dome-shaped transparent barrier appeared out of thin air around the entire compound. The massive sharp teeth of the snakes failed to put even a scratch on the barrier. The Konoha ninjas were surprised as well. They wondered, there is a barrier surrounding the compound. Since when was there a barrier here? More importantly, how did it activate suddenly when he didn't make any move? The Anbu trainees breathed a sigh of relief, while the Suna and Oto ninjas began wondering what to do. The fact that the barrier stopped the giant snakes so easily indicated how strong it truly was. It made them fall into a dilemma. Considering their situation, they immediately realized that they had two options. The first was just to avoid the compound and go around it to get deeper into the village. However, doing so left them vulnerable to being attacked from the rear. Once more Konoha ninjas appeared to stop them, they'd be attacked from every direction. Their second option was to attack the barrier until it broke down and kill everyone in the compound before continuing forward. However, if the barrier was too strong, they would be stuck at that location and allow Konoha's reinforcements to arrive. At the same time, destroying the barrier will consume their chakra rapidly. The experienced Anbu on Fujin's side realized this as well. Monkey glanced at Fujin and wondered, does he want them to exhaust their chakra first before we launch a surprise attack? After all, even though they are trainees, everyone here is well versed in ninjutsu. If we time our attack to just when the barrier breaks, we could hit them with over 100 jutsus at the same time. Before Suna and Oto ninjas could come to a decision, the giant snakes hissed and retreated backwards. Their actions surprised everyone. The Oto ninja who had summoned them with Orochimaru's scroll wondered, why are they retreating? Didn't Orochimaru-sama say that they'll continue moving forward until they take a lot of damage? Don't tell me. Did they sense some great danger ahead? As the snakes retreated, it became very visible that they were terrified of something. Their massive bodies shuddered uncontrollably, scales rippling as if crawling with unseen horrors. They thrashed their heads from side to side, slamming into the ground in frantic desperation, as if trying to shake off an invisible menace clinging to their skin. Their forked tongues flicked out rapidly as a hissing sound filled the air. However, instead of being intimidated by them, the Konoha ninjas could see dread in their eyes. The powerful serpents, who dominantly made their way to the outskirts of Konoha, were now slithering back in frantic, erratic patterns. The sudden change shocked the Suna and Oto ninjas. None of them could understand what was happening. However, it suddenly became extremely clear. Every scale on each of the giant snakes began glowing as the snakes panicked even more. Everyone first thought that this was an ability of the snakes. However, when they realized what it was, their eyes widened in horror as they shouted, "Holy crap! Take cover!" What was glowing wasn't the scales themselves. Instead, it was the explosive seals that somehow appeared on every scale of each snake. Within moments, each and every explosive tag exploded. 2 giant snakes were blown into smithereens as their blood and flesh rained into the nearby area. A part of the transparent barrier was now covered in blood as well. As for the third snake, it became too terrified and undid the summoning jutsu. It suddenly appeared in the Ryucha cave while hissing fearfully. Its hissing attracted the attention of all the powerful snakes in the Ryucha cave. However, before they could do anything or even understand the situation, the snake exploded. The explosion was so powerful that tremors were felt throughout the Ryucha cave. Countless small snakes in the vicinity died due to the explosion. The ground underneath the explosions collapsed as well, crushing hundreds of snakes living underground to death. The sudden attack shocked the Ryucha cave. Powerful snakes like Manda and their sages felt the loss of life and immediately moved in rage. Chapter 726, A Game of Death. The entire Ryucha cave shook due to the powerful explosion. The strongest snakes began moving, and within a few seconds their massive shadows covered the spot of the explosion. Garaga looked around and asked, "What was that? Are we under attack? Where is the enemy?" Manda replied, "There is no enemy. It was one of our own that exploded." Suddenly, both of them turned their heads and saw a large white serpent appearing behind them. Both respectfully said, "Sage!" The white snake sage muttered. He was summoned by Orochimaru a few minutes earlier. When he returned, his entire body exploded. The explosion and the destruction killed 2,356 young snakes. Even though her voice was calm, both Manda and Garaga became nervous. The other powerful snakes who had appeared weren't any different either. Manda cursed, "Crap! This old hag is angry. You're on your own, Orochimaru." Unlike the toads, the snakes weren't as protective of each other. They didn't mind the deaths of their fellow snakes much. Under normal circumstances, the white snake sage didn't care about it either. However, an attack on their holy ground crossed a line. The white snake sage let out a snort. Immediately, every giant snake who was still rampaging throughout Konoha disappeared in a cloud of smoke and returned back to the Ryucha cave. The Suna and Odo ninjas, who were engaged in an intense battle against the Konoha ninjas, were suddenly left dumbfounded. What just happened? Where are the damned snakes? Shit! Is this Orochimaru's trick? I knew that snake couldn't be trusted. Be careful! The Konoha ninjas are on the move! Just like them, the Konoha ninjas were surprised as well. However, it was a happy surprise. Without wasting any time, they launched a ruthless counterattack. Without the giant snakes to distract and block the Konoha ninjas, they gained an overwhelming upper hand. Similar scenes appeared in all 6 groups that were still alive. While they faced a severe challenge, the 26 Suna and Odo ninjas in front of Fujin's compound were in disbelief. Their greatest weapon was destroyed so easily. What horrified them was that none of them understood how that had happened. The fact that hundreds of explosive seals appeared on the giant snakes out of nowhere had shocked them to their core. In a panic, everyone began retreating. Fujin's clone waited until everyone was in the training ground before making the confrontation hand seal. Immediately, all the seals in the training ground were activated. The entire training ground was covered in barriers. The Suna and Odo ninjas shouted in panic, "Why are there barriers here? Shit, are we trapped? How do we get out? Fuck this shit, just attack a barrier and let's escape." The Ambu ninjas and trainees looked at Fujin's clone in shock. They didn't expect that Fujin would have made arrangements in the training ground as well. Fujin's clone ignored their stares and thought, "Though this isn't the occasion to have some fun, I doubt I'll get a chance to use these seals frequently. Even though my main body is in an intense battle, his chakra reserves are still at a good level. I should have some time." His eyes peered through the barriers and gazed upon the Suna and Odo ninjas. He decided, "I guess you guys can just curse your luck. Regardless, your contribution to test my seals will be remembered." The Odo and Suna ninjas began weaving hand seals. However, they stopped midway and glanced at their feet. Before any of them could realize it, chains appeared out of the ground and coiled around their feet, trapping them. Realizing the danger, they tried to concentrate chakra on their feet to break free of the chains and escape. However, their eyes widened in shock as they realized that they couldn't use their chakra. Before they could realize what was happening, more chains appeared from the ground. In the blink of an eye, all 26 ninjas were restrained by 5 chains each, 4 restraining each of their limbs and the last one tightening around their neck. Panic sounds were immediately heard throughout the training ground. Why are so many chains here, and how did they sneak up on us so easily? Also, what are these chains? They aren't normal chains. More importantly, why is our chakra suppressed? The chains restraining everyone weren't physical chains. Instead, they were created with the help of Fuinjutsu. While their shape was similar to normal metallic chains, they had a purplish glow and weren't entirely opaque. The Suna and Odo ninjas immediately realized the oddities and understood that they had fallen into a trap. Fortunately, one of the Suna ninjas had some knowledge about seals. He shouted, "Stop panicking! I have seen something like this before. These chains are a result of Fuinjutsu and have effects similar to chakra suppression seals. That is why we can't use our chakra." The other ninjas quickly asked, "How do we get out of it?" The ninja answered, "There are a few ways. The easiest is to have an ally destroy these chains and free us. Unfortunately, that option isn't available for us right now. The only option we have is to break these chains with our physical might. Even if one of us succeeds, that person can free the rest of us." Hope appeared in their eyes. However, they stopped wasting time when he continued, "Be fast! I have a bad feeling about this. I still don't understand why there are so many of these sealing chains here, and we still don't know how those snakes exploded. So hurry up!" Hearing his worried tone, every ninja began doing their best. When they tried to break the chains with just their physical might, they realized that the chains weren't as sturdy as metal chains. It increased their confidence, and they gave it their best. Unfortunately, the chains were just strong enough not to be broken by them. Fujin's clone observed their struggle and thought, none of them have the curse seals. Otherwise, they could have successfully broken through and survived what follows. Makes sense, I guess. Orochimaru won't send his elites for just this maneuver. Regardless, I won't be able to test the few other seal combinations in the training ground. Well, whatever. I didn't expect much from them anyways. Despite their failure, the Suna and Oto ninjas didn't give up and continued giving their best. Suddenly, their eyes widened in horror as they realized the chain around their neck was continuously tightening more and more. A few cursed with terror in their voice, "At this rate, we'll be strangled to death in less than 10 minutes. We have to hurry up. Someone please break these chains." Realizing that they were on a timer, they exploded with more strength than they ever had in their lives. A few managed to move their limbs a bit but still couldn't break the chains. Finally, an Odo ninja let out a primal scream as he summoned every ounce of strength from deep within. He raised his right arm until it was in front of his mouth and yelled, "As if I'll let some chains strangle me to death!" He opened his mouth wide and bit down upon the chain without any concern for his safety. Several of his teeth cracked, but the chain finally crumbled. He quickly grabbed a kunai and cut the remaining chains, finally freeing himself. As soon as he was free, he began laughing loudly, partially due to the relief of having made it out alive and partially for defeating the deadly trap Konoha had set for him. The remaining Odo and Suna ninjas were relieved as well. They shouted, "Quickly, hell!" Their words stayed stuck in their throats as the freed Odo ninja exploded. His blood and flesh rained upon the ninjas still trapped by the chains. They were so shocked that for half a minute, not a single word escaped their mouth. Finally, one person said, "Hey, what is this? What does this mean? If we break the chains, we'll explode like those snakes. However, if we don't break the chains, we'll still be strangled to death. Ha ha ha, what is this hell?" Every single person hearing his voice could feel how terrified he was. Terror had taken such a hold in his mind that he laughed like a maniac. The remaining ninjas felt the same terror. The glimpse of hope that had been lit was completely doused. Instead, they were filled with endless dread and misery. Fujin's clone shook his head and finally took his eyes off the 25 enemy ninjas. He thought, "That's hopeless. They've already given up. No miracles will happen here. Anyway," he glanced towards the village and thought, "of the 8 groups that attacked, only this one made it through. HMPH, this is undoubtedly Shikaku's doing. That lazy-ass definitely took it easy because my house is in this direction." Chapter 727, Instant Revenge. That lazy-ass definitely took it easy because my house is in this direction. While Fujin's clone understood Shikaku's thinking, he wasn't happy that some of the defenses of his compound were leaked. Now, everyone would know the existence of a strong barrier that activated once the compound was attacked. In addition, the smart people would also realize that the attackers would somehow be covered in explosive seal. As such, the effectiveness of his defenses would reduce a bit. Fujin's clone thought, while normal people won't understand the workings of the barrier, any Fuinjutsu Grandmaster can analyze it with rather ease. They'll realize that there are thousands of dormant explosive seals on the barrier that move on to the bodies of whoever comes in physical contact with it. Of course, they won't be able to replicate it. The principles behind this mechanism are based on the Flying Thunder God Mark's ability to move and my Fuin battlefields. However, they'll be able to create counters to avoid falling into the same trap as these unlucky ninjas and snakes. Fortunately, this is just my outermost defenses. The barrier followed by the dormant explosive seals are the 2 crudest defenses around my compound. My main arrangements are still a secret. However, I can't let this go so easily. Otherwise, that bastard will continue exploiting my house. Fujin's clone turned his gaze towards an Ambu ninja and said, "Pass a message to Shikaku immediately. Tell him that one of the snakes cancelled his summoning, returned to the Ryucha cave, and exploded there, likely killing hundreds of other snakes." The eyes of the surrounding ninjas popped out as Fujin continued. "The Ryucha cave might take offense and retaliate against us, either now or when our ninjas go out for mission. The losses could be catastrophic. Ask him to take countermeasures quickly." The Ambu ninja nodded and flickered in an instant. Considering how serious the matter was, he didn't dare to be tardy. Fujin glanced at the spot from where the snake disappeared and thought, "I didn't think a summon would be careless enough to endanger their sacred land. I'd have marked him if I knew." Well, I suppose I can always mark Enko's snakes to gain access there. A smile appeared on his face as he thought, a place as ancient and mystical as the Ryucha cave should be loaded with a lot of good stuff. Considering how strong the snakes are and the sages that exist there, ransacking that place will be fun. He broke out of his thoughts as he heard Tatsuya ask, "Fujin, what about the ninjas stuck in the training ground?" Fujin's clone answered, "They'll be dead soon. No need to worry about them. Instead, keep an eye out for any other bunch that might rush here. The village's defenses in this direction are lacking." Everyone nodded. Though no one said anything, they couldn't help but be in awe of what Fujin's clone had accomplished. Without leaving the compound, he had killed 3 gigantic snakes and eliminated 26 enemy ninjas. Instead of experiencing a brutal battle, they just had to watch the enemies explode without even stepping a foot into the compound. Even the experienced Anbu ninjas were excited by what had happened. Needless to say, the morale of the young trainees was off the roof. "That was exciting. Did you see how those snakes exploded? Even if Fujin-sensei isn't here, no one can attack this compound. Whoever attacks gets blown up. Is this what a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster can do? I want to become one too." Without any exception, everyone understood how well protected the compound was and felt fortunate to be living in such a safe space. A few also wondered why Fujin had made such arrangements, but on recalling what they just faced, they stopped guessing and were just thankful that Fujin had the foresight to do this. In the Hokage building, Shikaku was looking outside the window. He was looking at the smoke around Fujin's compound due to the explosions. A Hyuga ninja reported, "Orochimaru's summons exploded, and the remaining ninjas in the 7th group are trapped in some sort of barrier in the 23rd training ground. I'm unable to see what is happening inside." Shikaku nodded and thought, "As I expected, his house is undoubtedly the most protected building in the entire world. I didn't need to send anyone there. Still, I'm curious about the arrangements he made." Shikaku instructed, "Tell me everything that you saw happening." Before the Hyuga ninja could speak, an Anbu ninja flickered in and reported, "Shikaku-sama, I have urgent news from Suzuki Fujin. We may have a big problem." Shikaku's eyes widened in shock, and a stunned expression appeared on his face as the Anbu ninja passed Fujin's message. He thought, an attack on the Ryucha cave, and hundreds of snakes might be dead. What the hell? Shikaku immediately realized how troublesome the matter would be. If Snake Sneak attacked Konoha ninjas during the missions, then the losses would be catastrophic. While stronger ninjas like Chunins and Jounins could protect themselves against such sneak attacks, if stronger snakes like Manda moved, even elite Jounins could fall. In addition, the Ryucha Cave Sage would be even stronger and wouldn't have any trouble in going up against Rank S ninjas. Even though Ryucha Cave's strength wasn't greater than Konoha's, it was a conflict Shikaku would want to avoid at all costs due to how much work it would be for him. He cursed, "Shit, I should have known. That brat will never make my work easy. To think he'd retaliate against me so quickly and increase my workload once again. Did the snake really cancel the jutsu, or did that demon forcefully cancel the summoning to make life harder?" Shikaku wanted to cry. He could see how troublesome the future weeks would be for him. He immediately regretted trying to take advantage of Fujin's compound. If he had known that it could cause such complications, he'd have made stopping the 7th group a priority instead. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to do anything about it. Just then, the Yamanaka ninja in the room reported, "Shikaku-sama, all the snake summons returned at the same time. We don't know how that happened." Shikaku immediately realized, this should be a result of that snake exploding in the Ryucha cave. There is no doubt about it, they are definitely angry. The only question is, who will they take their anger out on? Will it be Orochimaru or us? Since Orochimaru was the summoner, he was the main person to be blamed for this mishap. As a summoner, he should have been more responsible. However, it was Konoha who performed the attack, even though they couldn't be blamed, so Shikaku wasn't entirely sure. He just hoped they focused their rage on Orochimaru so that his life would be more peaceful. Shikaku let out a sigh and muttered, "One problem at a time. Without the snake summons, the Suna and Odo ninja aren't our match. Pass a message to Lord Jirya to go to the arena and help out Lord Hokage. It's time to put an end to their misadventure." While Konoha dealt with the 8 groups Orochimaru sent as a distraction, the battles in the arena hadn't stopped. On the contrary, they became far more intense. With the Edo Tensei summons keeping the strongest ninjas busy, the Suna ninja breathed a sigh of relief. Without Fujin attacking them, their numbers finally stopped dropping drastically. Even though Fujin's assault had dropped their numbers drastically, giving Konoha a numerical advantage, the 400 Suna and a few Oto ninjas, who were still alive, gave their all to hold them back. The only thing that still bothered the Suna ninjas was their cage's absence. Intense battles broke throughout the stadium and arena. Since there wasn't enough space for everyone to fight, the battles spilled outside the arena as well. Needless to say, the most intense battles were happening inside the barrier and in the arena. No other ninja dared to step anywhere close to them. A part of the arena was now covered in ice. Another part looked like a submerged skeleton of an enormous animal. The ground in one part of the arena looked burnt. However, the burns were caused by lightning instead of fire. A huge chunk of walls around the arena were missing. Instead, huge scars filled with water could be seen on the ground. Renjiro, I forced your entire army to retreat 12 kilometers the last time we met. Even though I have been dead for a while, the result of our battle wouldn't be any different, Kaguya Shirogane said in an annoyed tone. For the past few minutes, he had been doing everything he could to go past Renjiro. However, Renjiro used earth and water jutsus artfully to keep him restrained and nullify his Kekkei Genkai. Not only did he prevent Shirogane from interfering in other battles, but he did so without getting injured. Chapter 728, Another Hyuga Genius. Renjiro chuckled and replied, "The last time we faced, I managed to lead my army back unharmed from your army's attacks. This time will be no different. Even though you are faster than me, you can't move faster than my jutsus. I can keep you here all day." Shirogane snorted and said, "You said it's been a decade since I died. Yet you're still weaker than me. You should be ashamed of yourself." Since his attacks couldn't break through Renjiro's defense, he resorted to taunts to make Renjiro make a mistake. However, Renjiro just laughed and said, "Oh, I'm nearly retired now. Nowadays, I focus on guiding youngsters. Considering how easily my student suppressed you a few minutes ago, I have to admit that I'm doing a damn good job. Don't you agree, Shirogane?" Shirogane asked in surprise. "That boy is your student." Their short clash had left quite an impression on Shirogane. While he believed that Renjiro was weaker than him, Fujin was a whole different matter. Even though his bones blocked most of the wind blades, Shirogane knew that he would have been killed by Fujin's wind domain if he was still alive. As a rank S ninja with a terrifying Kekkei Genkai, it was extremely rare for him to experience that. "Under your feet," Haku warned as Hoka flickered. Moments later, several large ice spikes appeared from under the ground where Hoka was initially standing. Haku followed it up by launching hundreds of flying water needles at Hoka, who flickered repeatedly. The constant barrage forced Hoka to retreat further, and an annoyed expression could be seen on his face. His situation was the exact opposite of Renjiro's. In terms of overall strength, he was superior to Haku. However, Haku's control over his Kekkei Genkai and proficiency in ranged attacks meant that Hoka couldn't land a single attack on him. Hoka flickered once again, dodging another barrage of water needles. However, instead of retreating further, he moved towards Haku at a tremendous speed and suddenly appeared a few steps in front of Haku. Haku analyzed, "He is good." He first backed away, giving the impression that he was being overwhelmed by my attacks when in reality, he was just looking for a way to maneuver through my attacks. However, this puts him at risk. Several water needles formed between Hoka and Haku and shot towards Hoka. However, Hoka was even quicker. The moment the needles started forming, he thrust his left palm forward and launched Vacuum Palm. The Vacuum Palm moved through the water needles, dispersing them, before landing on Haku's chest and sending him flying backwards for a few meters. Hoka flickered again to reduce the distance between them. Before Haku could gather himself, Hoka appeared in front of him and attacked with the gentle fist technique. Haku tried dodging, but Hoka landed 2 hits on him. The first was on his right arm and the second on his abdomen before Haku could retreat. Hoka thought, "Finally, I got him." His fighting style is nearly as annoying as Fujin's. Huh! Hoka's attacks blocked a few critical chakra points on Haku's body. Under normal circumstances, it would have been enough to end the battle. However, his Byakugan saw that the closed chakra points opened by themselves. Haku said, "It looks like the Hyuga's gentle fist technique doesn't work against this body." He weaved hand seals while warning, "Get away! If you are trapped in the formation of ice mirrors, you'll die." Ice Release, Crystal Ice Mirrors Jutsu. Thanks to Haku's warning, Hoka retreated before he could be surrounded by the ice mirrors. He carefully observed the technique and asked, "What's so special about this technique?" His eyes widened as Haku moved from one mirror to another before appearing outside the dome. He answered, "I can travel between the mirrors at a near instantaneous speed. Even though you are strong, you won't be able to keep up with my speed if you are trapped inside it. Even if you want to escape, my speed won't allow you to leave alive." Hoka quickly analyzed. "He's fast. In terms of movement speed, he's far above me. However," a smile appeared on Hoka's face as he took his fighting stance and said, "Bring it on." Haku, who was already weaving hand seals, was surprised. He thought, "Didn't his eyes see how fast I am? Why is he challenging me in this aspect? As long as he doesn't get surrounded by ice mirrors, I won't have any chance to defeat him." As he was being surrounded by the ice mirrors, Hoka thought, "For nearly a couple of years I've been training to counter Fujin's speed. Even though he is fast compared to Fujin, his speed lags far behind. Besides," Hoka chuckled as he thought, "how is this a trap? If I can't keep up, I can always escape underground. There are no ice mirrors under the ground to allow him to chase me there. Even if they were, I doubt he can move at this speed under the ground considering that he hasn't used a single earth jutsu." While Hoka was confident in himself, he wouldn't take such huge risks needlessly. The only reason why he let Haku surround him with ice mirrors was due to having such an easy escape route. "Here I come!" Haku warned as he moved rapidly between the ice mirrors. However, Hoka didn't move. While his body wasn't as fast as Haku's, he had no trouble following Haku's movements with his Byakugan. He could see that all the attacks were fake. Finally, a real attack came at Hoka from behind him. He quickly turned around and launched a vacuum palm at Haku, who stopped his attack and escaped into another mirror. For the next couple of minutes, Haku tried attacking Hoka, but Hoka countered every attack precisely. He didn't make a single unnecessary movement. Despite his overwhelming speed advantage, Haku couldn't get the upper hand and instead had several close calls. Hoka's clash with Haku attracted a few eyes as well. That said, nearly all of these eyes were special. The Hyuga clan ninjas quickly took note of Hoka's prowess. Even though Haku was warning Hoka during their battle, his attacks were ruthless. Except for Hayashi, no other Hyuga in the arena could survive against Haku for so long. Not to mention, Hoka wasn't just surviving but instead held the upper hand throughout their battle. Hayashi analyzed, "We misjudged Hoka's strength. No, it'd be more appropriate to say that he kept it hidden until now. The Jounin rank is incorrect for him. His prowess is completely at the elite Jounin rank. Even though he is still some distance from me, he is only 16 years old. Hayashi's eyes moved towards Fujin, who was single-handedly fighting both Juzo and Kaminari. And unlike the other fights, he was completely dominating the fight. Even without his wind domain, both Juzo and Kaminari were barely managing to hang on with incredible teamwork. Hayashi thought, for the past 6 months or so, Hoka has been spending a lot of time near Fujin's compound. From what I heard, he even guided some of the orphans that were put under Fujin's command. Initially, I thought that it was just due to their friendship. However, now it seems like he did so to hide his strength and be closer to a ninja that the Hyuga clan can't afford to offend. Hayashi's fingers landed on the chest of a Suna ninja, killing him on the spot. A smile appeared on his face as he continued thinking. As expected of a hot-blooded youngster, they tend to overthink everything. However, I can't blame him entirely. The conditions of today are no longer like those of the warring era. Even though there are still many who'd want to get their hands on the Byakugan, the danger is minuscule today compared to those days. Hence, with every generation, the discontent towards the caged bird seal grows. Unlike what Hoka and many other branch ninjas thought, Hayashi had no intention of using the caged bird seal to eliminate Hoka. Even if the threat of Fujin didn't exist, Hayashi would still feel the same. The only instance when he'd use it is if Hoka attacked the main family or displayed the intention to do so. As long as Hoka stayed peacefully with the main family, Hayashi didn't mind even if Hoka exceeded him and became a rank S ninja. As the leader of the Hyuga clan, having a rank S ninja among his ranks would only increase his influence. Seeing that his attacks didn't work, Haku suddenly launched Senbon needles from every direction at Hoka. The Hyuga ninjas immediately became worried about seeing that. They didn't see any way for Hoka to dodge the attack. However, their eyes widened. Hayashi was surprised too as Hoka released chakra from all his chakra points and used rotation. The Senbon needles hit the rotating chakra and bounced off harmlessly. Chapter 729, Unfulfilled Desires. The rumors don't do your strength any justice, might Guy, Zabuza claimed after getting kicked yet again. Even though Guy didn't open any of his inner gates, he was still strong enough to easily keep Zabuza at bay. It didn't matter what Zabuza threw at him, Guy just brushed everything off. The thick mist proved to be utterly ineffective. His water jutsus failed to hit Guy. Any water clones he created would be dispelled by one punch or kick. Luckily, his body could heal automatically, or several of his bones would have been broken as well. Of course, since Guy didn't open the inner gates, he didn't have any means to completely destroy Zabuza's body either. Another powerful punch landed on Zabuza's sword as Guy asked, "Oh, there are rumors about me in the land of water. I wonder what they say about Konoha's blue beast." Zabuza grinned and replied, "You've no idea, do you? Tell me, did you ever fight against an elite Jounin from Kirigakyo?" Guy was surprised. He couldn't recall ever fighting against any strong ninja from Kirigakyo. What Zabuza didn't know was that Guy was terrible at remembering faces. As they battled, Zabuza thought, if there is one ninja who the entire Kirigakyo, no matter the faction, is afraid of, it's this monster. After the end of the Third Great Ninja War, he was the highest priority target for all Kiri ninjas. We were ordered to kill him if we came across him, even if it cost our lives. From what I heard, elaborate plans were also created to eliminate him. Kirigakyo didn't want to see another ninja like Might Dai appear in Konoha. However, before any of the plans could be implemented, the civil war began and all plans were put on hold. By the time the Mizukage faction could focus on him again, he had already become a jounin and all plans were shelved. Instead of killing him, all top ninjas in the village were ordered to avoid confrontation with him at all costs. As he got pummeled once again, Zabuza muttered to himself, he doesn't even need to use that forbidden technique anymore. No matter what the end result was, you did your best, father. I can now see and understand why you violated the rules to save the lives of your comrades. I'm proud to be your son. Surprise appeared on Sakumo's face as he heard Kakashi. Soon, a smile broke out on his face, displaying his relief. Having received an opportunity to communicate nearly 4 years before they would have without Fujin's interference, Kakashi and Sakumo had a nice chat while battling. While Sakumo, despite not being at his strongest, was undoubtedly stronger, he was able to resist Orochimaru's control enough so that Kakashi didn't have any trouble keeping up with him. Fujin, who was in the middle of an intense battle, glanced in their direction. He had long anticipated that they'd have such a discussion. In fact, it was what he was counting on. A major weakness of the Edo Tensei Jutsu was that it'd be undone if the summoned ninja attained peace and decided to pass on. As such, he expected Sakumo to simply pass on and undo the Edo Tensei Jutsu. However, a frown appeared on his face as that didn't happen. "Brat, you dare to take your eyes off us!" Kaminari shouted as he charged towards Fujin while preparing another lightning jutsu. Without even glancing at him, Fujin slashed his sword and released a strong wind slash. He slashed it once again at Juzo's water jutsu. Despite being angered by Fujin's attitude, Kaminari was no longer careless. Lightning sparks always surrounded his body. Even though it didn't enhance his defenses and didn't make him as fast as the Reikage, it still allowed him to move ridiculously fast. He sidestepped to dodge the wind blade and continued moving forward at an incredible speed. However, his eyes widened as the wind blade suddenly changed its direction. Due to his incredible speed and the fact that he had only barely sidestepped it, he had very little time to react. He barely managed to dodge, but the wind blade took his left arm with it and left a huge cut on his abdomen as it passed him. On the other side, the wind slash and the accompanying winds blocked another water jutsu from Juzo. However, Juzo launched another water jutsu, cutting off Fujin's path to Kaminari and ensuring that he could regenerate. Fujin wondered with a frown, shouldn't his unfulfilled issues be resolved? Why is he still here? Sakumo smiled and said, while I hate the fact that I'm being used against my village and forced to fight my son, I'm glad I got to talk to you. Thank you for forgiving me. Growing up without a father or a mother must have been tough on you. Even though I wasn't there with you, let me guide you one last time. Even though Sakumo's words weren't very loud, Fujin could hear them. His eyes widened as he realized, no wonder he couldn't move on. When he was alive, he was known to be stronger than even the Sanins, making him the strongest ninja in the village after Hiruzen. And his young son displayed talent that overshadowed the legendary Sanins by a significant degree. Any father would regret not being there to raise his son, let alone in a case like this one. No wonder he didn't pass on. I guess he'll only pass on if Kakashi perfectly copies his technique. Fujin glanced through the arena once before his eyes landed on Juzo and Kaminari. No one realized what Fujin was looking at. Most suspected that he was only checking the state of the battlefield. However, what Fujin actually did was look at his shadow clone who was keeping an eye on Hiruzen's battle. Instead of one shadow clone, there were 2 shadow clones there. The original clone was still keeping an eye on Hiruzen and the Senju brothers, while the second clone was keeping an eye on Sakumo. Ever since Sakumo appeared, the shadow clone had created another clone to keep an eye on Sakumo. Seeing that one of his clones was observing Sakumo, Fujin didn't need to do so himself. He decided, it looks like Kakashi wouldn't be getting the breakthrough we need, so I'll have to be the one to do it. I've wasted enough time with these 2, time to go all out. In the past few minutes, Fujin had gone up against 2 ninjas who were extremely close to being rank S, yet he didn't have any trouble suppressing the 2 of them. He even injured them seriously on several occasions. However, the other ninja always interfered whenever he tried to seal the injured ninja, successfully creating a deadlock. A new arm formed as Kaminari looked at Fujin with a grim expression. He realized, he got a hang of my movements so quickly. If this continues, we'll be sealed before long. Huh, what the fuck? He can still use this technique. Fujin released another 20% of his chakra into the air. Against ninjas who were as fast and cunning as Kaminari and Juzo, the wind domain was more or less useless. Neither of them would ever set foot inside it. Hence, Fujin directly transformed it into the wind cloak. Both Juzo and Kaminari became tense on seeing that jutsu resurface. Both had seen how ridiculously fast Fujin was with the wind cloak. Even someone as strong and fast as Sakumo had failed to keep up with Fujin's movements when Fujin beheaded Gyuren. There were quite a few who were even more tense than Juzo and Kaminari despite not facing Fujin. They were the Suna ninjas who were unnerved and freaking out. Holy crap! Why can he still use that technique? Wasn't he unable to use that technique again, which is why he didn't use it despite facing two strong ninjas? And oh, how can that technique be used repeatedly? What are we supposed to do? Calm down. The fact that he didn't use that technique until now shows that it has some shortcomings. A technique of this scale must be extremely straining on his chakra reserves. Even though he used it again, this should be the last time he can use it. Hopefully, those two can exhaust it once again. Even the three ninjas who wanted to assassinate Fujin were disturbed. With the wind cloak, they didn't stand a chance. Panic discussions broke out among the Suna ranks. However, they all quickly came to the conclusion that this would be the last time Fujin could use that technique. Of course, several among them understood that their reasoning had several flaws. However, they had no choice but to hope that their speculations were true. After all, the alternative meant that not a single one of them would survive. Chapter 730, Guidance by the Expert. Among all the elements, lightning is the most destructive and has the highest penetrative power. Hence, lightning jutsus are extremely difficult to defend against. Neither earth nor water jutsus can stop it. Only wind jutsus can counter it, but there aren't many defensive wind jutsus. Ignoring the reappearance of wind cloak around Fujin, Sakumo explained while Kakashi continuously dodged and defended against his assault. He continued, "This is common knowledge. However, the advantage that this destructiveness provides is rather minimal. Even though lightning jutsus are fast, any good ninja wouldn't have any difficulty dodging them. That said, there are ways you can use lightning manipulation to take your skills to the next level. More specifically, there are two ways. The first is using lighting to enhance your physical abilities. Even here, there are two aspects, though both are closely related to each other. I'm sure you know how the third Reikage and his son fight, right, Kakashi?" Kakashi blocked another attack and replied, "Yes, father. Both create a lightning armor that enhances their speed, strength, and defense by a huge degree." Sakumo replied, "Yes, the first aspect is using lightning to enhance your physical attributes temporarily. When I was younger, I found the third Reikage technique quite fascinating. With third Hokage's assistance, I researched his technique for several years. Unfortunately, we weren't able to replicate it. It's still a mystery to us how he was able to create such a technique. However, the research bore some fruits. We were able to replicate certain aspects of the technique like improving speed momentarily. Granted, none were good enough to be used at the highest level independently. What we succeeded in was the second aspect. Unlike the first aspect, where you have to actively use lightning to enhance yourself, the second aspect focuses on permanently improving your strength." A smile appeared on Sakumo's face as he said, "I can see that you have already had some success in this aspect." Kakashi was surprised, but immediately understood what Sakumo was referring to. He asked, "You mean my Chidori?" Sakumo replied, "So that jutsu is called Chidori, that's an appropriate name. Your Chidori is quite similar to the Reikage lightning chakra mode, just that it is limited to a very small part of your body. However, due to using Chidori with your right hand, I can feel that your right hand is far stronger than the rest of your body. This is the second aspect. You have to use lightning to temper your body and make it stronger. This is why the third Reikage body was so much stronger than a normal ninja. Of course, while it sounds easy, it isn't that straightforward. Tempering your limbs is easy, and so is tempering your flesh. However, in order to completely master this aspect, you need to temper your entire body, including your internal organs, with lightning. Needless to say, this is very dangerous and can result in death. That is why I didn't leave any scrolls regarding this to you. The third Hokage should still have those scrolls, though. Once this war is over, you should ask him or the elders for it. It'll increase your strength considerably and make it easier for you to explore the second way." In an inconspicuous corner of the arena, one of Fujin's clones was staring at Sakumo. Considering the distance between them, he shouldn't be able to hear Sakumo's words. Thankfully, the encounter with the Odo ninjas had provided him with some inspiration to use winds to control and manipulate sound. While he still wasn't an expert at it, he could control the winds enough to be able to hear Sakumo's words clearly. Due to the war and how little chakra he needed to do this, no one noticed him using winds to eavesdrop on Sakumo's conversation. Under normal circumstances, Sakumo and Kakashi would have instinctively felt that they were being spied upon, but there were already too many eyes on them, so neither focused on such instincts. The clone thought, tempering the body with lightning. Not bad, Sakumo's thinking is on point. From the third Reikage scroll, tempering the body is a requirement to master the lightning chakra mode. Without it, mastering it is impossible. Luckily, even though the scroll doesn't have all the details about the lightning chakra mode, it has a very detailed explanation about how to temper your body with lightning. I've already verified that it is safe to practice thanks to the weeks I spent learning medical ninjutsu. I don't need the scroll. However, there will be an issue. Sakumo had been dead for a couple of decades, yet he identified that Kakashi's arm was far stronger than the rest of his body. If Fujin tempered his body with lightning, other strong ninjas would be able to see the changes in his physique. Even if he somehow found a way to hide it, Guy will easily realize it when they spar. Fujin's clone thought for a bit before giving up and deciding, screw it. I'll just tell whoever asks that I achieved a similar effect by tempering my body with sharp winds. If Hiruzen lives and asks me for it, I'll just say that it is too dangerous to ever be taught to anyone. If he pushes for it, I'll ask for all the forbidden jutsus in the scroll of sealing in return. Kakashi asked, "What is the second way?" Lightning flowed through Sakumo's white tanto and began emitting a white light. He moved towards Kakashi while swinging his tanto at Kakashi, launching countless sparks of white lightning at Kakashi. Due to their density and the bright light they were emitting, it looked like Sakumo unleashed light at Kakashi instead of lightning. Kakashi immediately flickered away and the white light landed on the ground, burning the top layer of the soil in the blink of an eye. Sakumo continued unleashing more such attacks, forcing Kakashi to dodge continuously and increasing the burnt surface further. Suddenly, sparks appeared around Sakumo's body, increasing his speed considerably. He appeared in front of Kakashi and jabbed the tanto at his heart. Realizing that he couldn't keep dodging, Kakashi used Chidori to block the tanto. In terms of chakra, both jutsus were equally matched. However, Kakashi immediately felt a burning sensation in his right hand. Despite being tempered by lightning countless times and covered by his Chidori, the white lightning moved through his Chidori and burned his hand. Sakumo quickly began resisting and stopped using lightning to enhance his speed. He said, "The second way is to use yin and yang manipulation to improve the strength of your lightning jutsus." Kumagakyo managed to successfully fuse yang chakra into lightning chakra and created black lightning. Merging yang chakra into it made it much stronger than normal lightning. I couldn't fuse yang chakra into lightning, but managed to fuse yin chakra instead. Hence, the form of my lightning is very different from yours, and my control over lightning is very high. This is also why my lightning could move through your lightning. Sakumo paused for a few seconds before letting out a sigh. He continued, "I wanted to teach you this technique when you became a jounin. Unfortunately." Sakumo didn't complete his sentence. He was just thankful that he received an opportunity to interact with Kakashi even after his death. He said, "With your Sharingan, you can see the secrets of my technique very easily, but merely looking at it with Sharingan won't allow anyone to copy a technique this complicated. You'll have to train to infuse yin chakra into lightning chakra. However," a smile appeared again on Sakumo's face as he said with pride, "I have no doubt that you'll master it, Kakashi." As Sakumo said, Kakashi had memorized the technique with his Sharingan. Even though he couldn't copy it on the spot, he could use it as a reference while training. For a ninja of his caliber, it was more than enough. Not to mention, he also received several other paths to explore. For Kakashi, who had started to take his training seriously after his clash with Kabuto, this was a timely and godly assistance. It was something that didn't miss the eyes of Fujin's clone, who immediately fell into thoughts. Strange. Since when did Kakashi become this serious about becoming stronger? He analyzed it for some time. It shouldn't be me. The fact that I'm rank S has been propagated for a while others could have been doubtful. He should have known the truth through Guy. Similarly, it can't be Guy either. Was it just because of Sakumo? Fujin's clone wasn't sure and felt that it might not be the case, but he didn't dare to overlook this small detail. At that time, Fujin's strength was considerably higher than Kakashi's strength. In fact, the difference was so huge that Kakashi didn't even have a chance of competing against Fujin. However, Fujin didn't dare underestimate Kakashi's talent. If someone like him was to train seriously for several years, it'd result in a change that couldn't be ignored by anyone. A smirk appeared on Fujin's clone's face as he muttered to himself, "Interesting." Chapter 731, The Momentum of a Cage. Fujin's clone could easily see Kakashi becoming in existence at the same level as the Sanins, if not surpass them in a few years. He thought, in the original story, though Kakashi was a lot stronger after the time skip, he still lacked considerably compared to the Sanins. It was only during the Fourth War that his strength, chakra, and stamina somehow increased dramatically. If he gains that strength before Akatsuki makes a move against Gaara, then all the future events involving Akatsuki will drastically change too. Sigh, to think that the one thing I was a bit confident about having avoided will be affected as well. I guess it is time to dig a grave and bury my knowledge of the future. Even though Fujin had the realization before the finals began, he still clung to the hope that some events, especially the ones related to Akatsuki, might still play out similarly up to a certain point. However, Kakashi's determination buried that last hope in him. Fujin's clone stopped thinking about the depressing stuff and analyzed the good stuff. That said, I never expected that Sakumo's main attacking method would be a near-perfect fusion of yin and lightning nature. As expected, every powerhouse's main method of attacking is peculiar. Fujin's clone had observed their clash very carefully. The reason why Kakashi's Chidori lost wasn't due to the strength of their lightning but their forms. A typical lightning jutsu would have the form of a bolt or a current. However, Sakumo's white lightning was akin to a bombardment of tiny needles. When Kakashi jabbed towards Sakumo, his hand was bombarded with thousands of small independent lightning sparks in an instant. It made Fujin recall the Rasen Shuriken, though Sakumo's attack wasn't that dense. The bombardment pierced through the lightning covering Kakashi's hand before hitting it. Had Sakumo been at his full strength, he could have easily won the battle with this one exchange. Fujin's clone concluded, that technique is at the same level as the black flame Hiruzen exhaled. In terms of destructiveness, it even surpasses the black flame. To think yin chakra could affect lightning in this manner. Darui's black lightning was nowhere near this level. Otherwise, I would have been injured in Kumagakyo. No, I'd have died 5 years ago. Back then I had caught his black lightning with my palm. Had it been Sakumo's attack, that'd be no different than committing suicide. Other than my wind domain and the Reikage body, I doubt any defenses can stop this attack. Even Rashomon would collapse due to the constant bombardment. I guess a barrier might have a chance. Regardless, this opens up a whole new door of possibilities for me. He took a deep breath and thought. Several years ago, I had used yin-yang manipulation to enhance my jutsus to the next level. However, during our battle, Orochimaru displayed phenomenal skill in fusing yang chakra into elemental jutsus that went far beyond what I had done. Just when I started getting a hang of it, Hiruzen and Sakumo displayed jutsus that are far superior to even that. To think that it had so much potential. Hehe, it looks like my wind still has a lot of scope to improve. Fujin's clone continued watching their battle while calculating how he could infuse more yang and yin chakra in his wind jutsus. Of course, he also thought of doing so with lightning jutsus. He had a feeling that if he succeeded, he could take on Ai for some time with his Akuro identity without having to resort to the flying thunder god jutsu. While Sakumo passed his jutsus to Kakashi, Fujin finally decided to end the battle. Juzo, Kaminari, and hundreds of Suna ninjas became tense on seeing the wind cloak reappear around Fujin. Along with his previous wind domain and his battle against Juzo and Kaminari, Fujin's chakra reserves finally dropped below half. Kaminari snorted and said, "Impressive! I didn't think you could use it again. However, I wonder if you can sustain it for as long as you did earlier. Unlike us, your chakra is limited." A smirk appeared on his face as he taunted Fujin. Juzo grabbed his sword as well and became completely serious. While he wasn't a fan of being controlled in this manner, Fujin's display had riled him up. He wanted to see how strong the person who killed him truly was. Fujin didn't reply and directly made his move. Seeing his figure disappear, Kaminari immediately unleashed a deadly lightning jutsu. Lightning snakes appeared from his fingertips and moved forward to intercept Fujin, who was moving towards them at blinding speed. Fujin merely slashed his sword forward, releasing a wind slash that easily cut through all the lightning snakes and moved towards Kaminari. However, Juzo intervened once again, spitting out a vast amount of water to intercept his wind slash. The water absorbed the destroyed lightning snakes and became electrified before rushing towards Fujin. Kaminari said, "Good. We just need to stall for time again until that cloak runs out of chak." His eyes widened as Fujin didn't bother dodging or attacking the electrified water. Instead, he just moved straight through it. While Juzo's use of water jutsu was perfect once again, the combination jutsu wasn't really focused on attack. It lacked the power to harm Fujin's wind cloak. "Shit! Be careful!" Kaminari shouted as he moved backwards. Juzo retreated as well, but not before forming 4 water clones to stop Fujin. Behind him, Kaminari created 4 lightning clones to slow Fujin down and buy them some time. However, several air bullets were created and fired spontaneously from the wind cloak. Just one hit took out the elemental clones, and Fujin appeared in front of Juzo while swinging his sword down vertically on him. Juzo didn't bother trying to defend and just swung his sword at Fujin's waist, aiming to cut Fujin into 2. Since he could heal from any injuries, a double blow would be advantageous for Juzo. In fact, one of the reasons why Fujin hadn't been able to seal them until now was the reckless nature of their fighting due to their immortality. However, with the wind cloak, Fujin was significantly faster than Juzo. Before Juzo could complete even half a swing, Fujin had cut him open vertically. Kaminari already knew this would happen, and hence he attacked Juzo from behind by launching a supercharged false darkness jutsu on him. Needless to say, his real target was Fujin, who was in the line of attack as well. The moment Fujin's blade cut through Juzo's body, Kaminari's attack arrived. Without flinching, Fujin exhaled infinite breakthrough jutsu at the incoming lightning spears. The wind jutsu blasted through the lightning spears, hit the retreating Kaminari, and sent him flying into the forest outside the arena. The wind blades in the jutsu mutilated Kaminari, but he didn't mind the damage and thought, "I barely made it." His jutsu dispersed the remains of Juzo's body, so he can't be sealed before he reforms. However, his pupils dilated as Fujin appeared right above him and swung his blade at Kaminari. Lightning sparks appeared all over Kaminari's body as he escaped by the thinnest of the margins. As he flickered constantly through the forest, he wondered, how the hell did this brat grow this strong? Even with Juzo's help, I'm barely able to keep up with him. A frown appeared on his face as Fujin appeared in front of him, easily keeping up with his ridiculous speed. However, Kaminari had expected it. Several explosive tags appeared between him and Fujin and exploded in an instant. The explosions forced Fujin to move away, while Kaminari flew backwards due to the force of the explosion. He flipped in the air to regain his balance and used the trees as footholds to constantly retreat at a high speed. As Fujin appeared next to him once again, a face appeared in Kaminari's mind. Kaminari thought, "This is just like that time. No matter what we do, we are unable to even phase him. None of our techniques can harm him, while he easily toys with us. It's as if we're nothing but pests." Hatred appeared in Kaminari's eyes as he fiercely clashed with Fujin. Once again, he barely clung onto his body at the cost of getting trashed around. A grim expression appeared on his face as he thought, "This is just like that accursed Reikage." The face that appeared in his mind was of none other than the third Reikage. Due to the talent he showed, Kaminari was an important part of Kumo's forces. As such, the third Reikage had taken an interest in him and guided him a bit. As any hot-blooded and ambitious youngster, Kaminari wanted to become stronger than his cage. However, no matter what he did, he was never able to close the distance between the two of them. Even when he became an elite jounin who was just a step away from becoming a rank S ninja, it was still the same. Against the third Reikage, he was always as helpless as an academy student. The feeling Kaminari got from Fujin was the same. No matter what he and Juzo tried, nothing worked against Fujin. He just brushed off all attacks like they were nothing but dust while they were continuously trashed by him. It caused Kaminari to recall some unpleasant memories. Kaminari hatefully muttered, "There is no doubt about it. If he's left alive, this brat will reach that level. He already has the momentum of a cage." Chapter 732, Blitzing Through the Battlefield. "He has the momentum of a cage," Kaminari muttered solemnly. As someone who lived through 2 great wars and fought countless ninjas, Kaminari had experienced nearly everything he could on the battlefield. However, the moments that created the highest impact on him were when he saw certain ninjas fighting with an unstoppable momentum. When they battled, even the rank S ninjas in the enemy camp would be fearful. As a high-level Kumo ninja, the one who he watched the most was the third Reikage. With his absurdly powerful physique and the invincible lightning chakra mode, he was a force to reckon with on the battlefield. Kaminari was also fortunate enough to witness Hiruzen, Anoki, and Sakumo on the battlefield and make it out alive. None of them were ninjas Kaminari could take on, and now, as he fought Fujin, he got the same glimpses as those ninjas. The fact that Fujin did so with a technique that had never appeared before reinforced that feeling. While he could see that there was still some distance between Fujin and them, that distance was inconsequential for him. As he continued getting trashed, the hatred in Kaminari's heart grew. After seeing what the third Reikage could do, he longed to reach that level. After years of unsuccessful efforts, he gave up on creating new techniques and put all his hopes into the lightning chakra mode. Unfortunately, the third Reikage realized how troublesome his personality was. To ensure stability in Kumagakure, he didn't teach Kaminari the lightning chakra mode, dooming his hope of ever reaching that stage. It was why he hated Kumo and left the village. Of course, he only dared to do so after the third Reikage was dead. Wind blades continued ripping through his body. He had already lost both of his arms, and several chunks in his chest and abdomen were missing. A deep cut could also be seen in his neck. However, Kaminari continued moving while looking at the location where Juzo's body was reforming from the corner of his eyes. He thought, I just have to hang on for a few sec. What the hell? As Juzo's body was reforming, a gentle breeze appeared and engulfed him in the blink of an eye. The winds took the shape of a palm with Juzo's body at the center of the palm. A seal appeared on the palm, stopping Juzo from being revived. Kaminari immediately saw who was doing so and spotted a person. He thought, a shadow clone. When did he create a shadow clone? Kaminari immediately recalled his battle against Fujin and realized, it was when I was launched into the forest. Shit! He quickly stepped to his left to avoid the sword Fujin was thrusting towards his abdomen. However, a mini hurricane appeared around Fujin's sword and expanded in the blink of an eye, engulfing Kaminari and dismembering his body into several more pieces. Kaminari cursed hatefully, Basta! Even before he could finish a single word, Fujin grabbed his floating head with his left hand, applying a seal at the same time. Kaminari's eyes widened as his body stopped regenerating. In such a poor state, Kaminari had no way to resist Fujin's seal, which not only immobilized him but also sealed his soul. Under Fujin's control, the earth moved and boxed his head and other body parts in, before Fujin applied more seals to ensure that the job was done. Some distance away, his clone did the same to Juzo. In under a minute after using his wind cloak again, Fujin had sealed Juzo and Kaminari. Haku's Senbon needles bounced harmlessly off Hoka's rotation as the Hyuga ninjas watched in surprise. Haku, who was moving to launch the finishing blow, was surprised. After blocking the needles, Hoka suddenly flickered without bothering to properly end his jutsu. He appeared next to Haku, who was still mid-air. As Haku looked at him, he could see the chakra Hoka released to create the rotation was still around him. Without giving Haku any opportunity, Hoka launched a deadly assault. His palms repeatedly hit Haku's chakra points. However, it was different this time. Hoka didn't limit himself to the traditional gentle fist style. Instead, he used the remaining chakra from his jutsu to blast Haku's chakra points and destroy them from within. Hoka concentrated all the chakra around him on his right palm before he landed the final hit on Haku's chest. Haku coughed before a hole was blown up in his chest. Every Hyuga who watched Hoka's counterattack was shocked. A few gulped their saliva and wondered aloud, did Hoka improve the rotation jutsu? I have never seen anyone use rotation in this manner. He is incredible. Not only has he learnt the jutsu of the main family, but he also improved it further. Not only can he defend with the jutsu, but he can also use it to create a terrifying counterattack. This changes the jutsu fundamentally. An old Hyuga Jounin said. Hayashi was no exception either. He thought, this is a rather ingenious way of using the chakra that is used during rotation. However, using it in this manner isn't very useful in normal circumstances. After all, the basic gentle fist style works on nearly every ninja. He must have created these modifications, keeping the vacuum palm jutsu in mind. If he can use that chakra to fire far stronger vacuum palm jutsu, then it'd give a real bite to the jutsu. Considering that the opponents would momentarily be tired from using a jutsu strong enough to force him to use rotation, they wouldn't anticipate such a quick counterattack and could be taken down with surprise. The more Hayashi analyzed, the more impressed he became with Hoka's ingenuity. Needless to say, he intended to copy every single bit of it. Due to the excess chakra Hoka used, the hole in Haku's chest continued growing larger for a second before the regenerative ability of the Edo Tensei Jutsu kicked in. However, a smirk appeared on Hoka's face. Instead of focusing on his opponent, Haku glanced behind. His eyes widened as he thought, incredible! Did he seal Juzo and Kaminari in such a short while? Having sealed Juzo and Kaminari, Fujin left clones behind to watch over them and returned to the arena. Hoka had noticed Fujin's return with his Byakugan, which is why he went all out to finish his battle. Within moments, Haku was sealed up as well. Hayashi glanced at Fujin and thought, come to think of it, Hoka's modifications have some similarities with his wind jutsu. I wonder if he took inspiration from that wind dome or if Fujin guided him. Fujin left another shadow clone to watch over Haku before he and Hoka flickered. Noticing that Fujin and Hoka sealed Haku, Guy grinned and said, I enjoyed battling with you. Unfortunately, the time isn't appropriate to indulge. Suddenly, Guy opened the first 5 inner gates. Zabuza muttered, so this is the forbidden technique that killed 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. A grin appeared on his face as he swung his sword to intercept Guy and shouted, "Let me see what they had to go through." Zabuza fiercely counterattacked Guy, who appeared in front of him at an insane speed. However, Guy easily diverted his attacks before landing several powerful hits on Zabuza, deforming his body and creating a couple of holes. Just like he did with Haku, Fujin appeared behind Zabuza and sealed him within a few seconds. While Fujin joined forces with Guy, Hoka moved to assist Renjiro. Unlike Renjiro, he didn't intend to fight Shirogane from a distance. He ran on the water bodies Renjiro had created and faced off Shirogane. A grin appeared on Shirogane's face. For the past few minutes, Renjiro had left him completely frustrated. All his attacks were absorbed by near endless amounts of water and earth. The insults he hurled at Renjiro had no effect either. Instead, Renjiro engaged in a playful banter to waste more time. He was a few moments away from losing his cool when Hoka moved towards him. Several bones popped out of his body as Shirogane laughed and claimed, "Finally, someone in Konoha has balls!" Hoka knew that Shirogane was just saying so to prevent him from doing the same thing that Renjiro had been doing. He snorted and took a battle stance. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Instead of attacking chakra points as usual, Hoka used the jutsu defensively to block all of Shirogane's attacks. Shirogane attacked maniacally, but his grin slowly faded away. He realized, what the fuck? Even though he is close, his tactic is the same as Renjiro's, but why did he come close to me if he didn't intend to attack? His eyes suddenly widened as he felt a presence behind him. Chapter 733, Turning the Tides in the Blink of an Eye. Under normal circumstances, Shirogane would have easily sensed anyone sneaking up on him and countered before that happened. However, Hoka's frontal assault kept him occupied. He immediately realized, so that's why this bastard is fighting this way. He isn't here to seal me, but only wants to distract me when the real attack arrives. Shirogane could have still spared some attention towards the new attacker, but Renjiro continued distracting him by launching water shurikens from weird angles. These two factors, combined with Fujin's ridiculous speed, meant that Shirogane couldn't divide his attention to focus on the new opponent. Hence, he simply decided to launch several sharp bone projectiles from his back to force Fujin away. However, his bones had barely appeared out of his back and hadn't even been launched when several vacuum blades cut through his body and ruthlessly sliced him into several pieces. No matter how strong his bones were, they couldn't resist the sharp vacuum blades. Realizing the danger, Shirogane twisted his head at a very odd angle to ensure that his brain wasn't sliced through. Even though his neck was sliced through, his head remained intact. He looked at Fujin and scoffed internally, as if I'd let myself be sealed without getting a taste of blood. He immediately controlled all the bones in the pieces of his body and was about to launch every single one of them in all directions. He thought, Renjiro is too far away to be hit, and this guy has weird defenses, but the Hyuga won't stand a chance against Mai. Suddenly, his eyes widened as several vacuum palms landed on crucial chakra points on Shirogane's floating head. Hoka thought, even though I don't like studying much, there was no way I wouldn't research the Kaguya clan. They were the only clan who could defeat a Hyuga in taijutsu. Even though Fujin cut him, he won't lose his vitality so easily. A fraction of a second after Hoka's attacks landed on Shirogane, a fist landed on his head. The water under their feet retreated and exposed the hard ground as Guy's punch pulverized Shirogane's head along with the remaining pieces of his body. Renjiro chuckled. He had noticed Guy's movements and immediately withdrew the water around the area while hardening the ground at the same time. As a result, the bones that had previously been slashed by Fujin were almost entirely pulverized by Guy, and Shirogane lost consciousness. Before the Edo Tensei Jutsu's regeneration could kick in, Fujin sealed him up as well. The battlefield came to a standstill once again as the Suna and Konoha ninjas looked at the arena in shock. Just a couple of minutes ago, the entire battlefield was in a deadlock. The reanimated ninjas kept the strongest Konoha ninjas busy, while the Suna elites held off the remaining Konoha ninjas. However, the situation changed in the blink of an eye. Before they could realize it, Fujin suddenly sealed 5 of the 6 reanimated ninjas. And now, Fujin, Guy, Renjiro, and Hoka were glancing at Sakumo. The morale of the Konoha ninjas rose once again, and several ninjas exclaimed loudly, "That's incredible! They defeated those reanimated ninjas just like that. Now only the White Fang is left." As expected of Councilman Fujin, they didn't stand a chance against him. "Ha ha ha, this is incredible. We can't lag behind. Kill these Suna scums, make them pay for trying to invade our home." On the other hand, the Suna ninjas were horrified. "How can that be? This is impossible. How could strong ninjas like Shirogane, Kaminari, Juzo, and Zabuza be sealed so easily? Fuck Orochimaru. Why did we ally with such an incompetent fellow? Forget Orochimaru. Where is Lord Fourth? If that monster turns his blade towards us, we're dead. The thought of Fujin turning his attention on them terrified the Suna ninjas. The feet of the three Jounins who wanted to assassinate Fujin froze too. Unlike others, they had watched all of his actions. Any thoughts they had of killing Fujin evaporated away. They could only pray that Sakumo could stall Fujin. The Konoha ninjas launched a spirited assault on the demoralized Suna ninjas. They still gave their best, but the number of Suna ninjas falling kept rising at an alarming rate. Baki's expression became very ugly as he realized, if Orochimaru doesn't have any more hidden cards and Lord Kazekage doesn't show up, this battlefield is doomed. The only way things could turn around is if the Hokage falls. However, helplessness appeared in his eyes. After the first and second Hokage appeared inside the barrier, he expected Hiruzen to fall very easily. However, the reality was the exact opposite. Forget dying, Hiruzen held the upper hand throughout the battle. From Baki's observation, the only way Hiruzen could lose is if he ran out of chakra. However, it was extremely clear that every Suna ninja would be long dead before Hiruzen ran out of chakra. Once Sakumo was sealed and Fujin turned his attention to them, the war would be over. However, Baki still held some hope. He thought, since Lord Kazekage hasn't appeared yet, he must be doing something very important. That could be a way for us to turn this around. In addition, Orochimaru should be aware of the situation too. Once we are wiped out, every Konoha ninja will attack the barrier. Surrounded by hundreds of ninjas, Orochimaru might fall as well. Since he is still only focusing on the Hokage, he must have some plans as well. As Baki suspected, Orochimaru did have a few plans. Even so, his expression was ugly. He thought, Guren's death messed up my arrangements badly. The battle outside is a complete loss. If Sakumo had gone all out, he could have tied Fujin down. However, with him resisting my commands, his strength weakened to a point where even Kakashi could handle him. That said, confusion appeared in his eyes as he wondered, what game is Kakashi playing? Shouldn't his strength be much higher? Why is he still hiding his strength even after seeing Kabuto? Orochimaru was genuinely confused. When Kakashi appeared in the arena along with Sasuke, Orochimaru looked at Kakashi with a whole new gaze. The fact that someone like him kept his true power hidden for so long increased Orochimaru's respect for him. However, his actions on the battlefield confused Orochimaru. Orochimaru couldn't help but wonder, could it be that he has kept his power hidden from even the top brass of Konoha? Hehe, that's interesting. I wonder what his true motives are, considering that he doesn't go all out even at such a critical time. Sakumo was barely done explaining and displaying his critical techniques to Kakashi when Fujin and others arrived. Sakumo smiled and said, "It seems I'm the last one. You guys did a good job. I'll continue resisting Orochimaru's command. Seal me quick." He suddenly stopped talking as his eyes went completely black. Sparks appeared around his body as his speed increased tremendously. Winds blasted behind Fujin as he moved forward to intercept Sakumo. In the blink of an eye, their blades clashed hundreds of times as the two engaged in a terrifying battle. Guy asked in confusion, "What happened? Why did your father suddenly go all out?" Kakashi answered grimly, "It looks like Orochimaru has taken control of his mind completely." Renjiro agreed and added, "Orochimaru was likely struggling to control all 6 of them at the same time. However, since Sakumo-sama is left now, Orochimaru must be focusing entirely on him." It was exactly as Kakashi and Renjiro analyzed. Once Fujin sealed 5 reanimated ninjas, the only ones left were Kabuto and Sakumo. Unlike the others, Orochimaru did not need to control Kabuto. Due to his loyalty, Kabuto followed Orochimaru's plans without the need for any control. Hence, Orochimaru focused entirely on Sakumo, which increased his control drastically. He completely suppressed Sakumo's will and made him go all out, at least to the extent to which his body allowed. As such, Sakumo fought just like how Hashirama and Tobirama were fighting. Hoka asked with a frown, "What do we do now? Sealing him will be extremely difficult. Should we assist Fujin or should we leave him to Fujin and focus on others?" Guy immediately answered, "Let's assist Fujin. I can open my inner gates once again for a short while without tiring myself." Kakashi nodded too. However, Renjiro glanced in the direction of the barrier and looked at Hiruzen and his opponents. Looking at the state of the battle, he quickly analyzed the situation. Before Kakashi, Guy, and Hoka could join the battle, he softly said, "Wait!" Kakashi, Guy, and Hoka glanced at Renjiro, wondering what he was planning. Chapter 734, Spectral Swordsman vs. White Fang. Lightning Release, White Death Jutsu. Fujin frowned as nearly every chakra point on Sakumo's body released white lightning and moved in all directions. However, the majority of it was moving towards Fujin. Fujin immediately waved his left arm, transforming a part of the wind cloak back into winds, which formed a sphere around him. The white light engulfed the wind sphere, making the Konoha ninjas worried as they could no longer see him. Renjir and others retreated as well. In the middle of the lightning storm, Fujin saw several lightning sparks continuously entering the wind sphere before being discharged harmlessly. Even so, he couldn't help but think, the amount of yin chakra concentrated in his lightning is beyond ridiculous. I have a very strong resistance to lightning, but if I try to endure this attack with just my body, I'll be seriously injured. During his fight against the Kumo ninjas, Fujin frequently stopped powerful lightning jutsus with just his palm. However, he didn't dare to test out Sakumo's jutsus despite having his wind cloak. Damn, such an intense jutsu! What is happening inside? Due to the lightning chakra, I can't sense anything inside it, a sensor from the Yamanaka clan exclaimed. The Hyuga ninja beside him replied, I can't see anything inside either. The white lightning blinds even my Byakugan. They weren't the only ones. Even Fujin's chakra field didn't work inside the range of Sakumo's attack. Fortunately, he still had other means to sense. A vacuum layer formed around the edge of his blade as he swung his sword forward. Taking advantage of the blindness his jutsu would cause, Sakumo attacked Fujin. His white tanto pierced through the wind sphere before he noticed Fujin swinging his blade to intercept his attack. At the same time, the wind sphere around Fujin suddenly expanded, neutralizing the intense lightning around him. Noticing the vacuum layer along Fujin's blade and fearing being trapped inside the wind domain, Sakumo retreated immediately. However, strong winds blasted behind Fujin as he used the assassin's rush jutsu to take Sakumo head-on. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to outrun Fujin, white lightning appeared around his right fist as he punched forward. The lightning was unleashed from his fist and transformed into a white dragon as it moved towards Fujin. Fujin immediately countered by swinging his sword. A massive vacuum slash along with accompanying winds was launched in the arena. Sakumo immediately dodged the vacuum slash while using lightning to defend against the accompanying winds. However, Fujin's attack cleared the battlefield of the white lightning while leaving hundreds of new scars on the ground. The Konoha and Suna ninjas were finally able to see what was happening inside. The fear in the eyes of the Suna ninjas increased, while relief appeared in the eyes of Konoha ninjas on seeing Fujin unharmed. However, these feelings immediately disappeared from a few ninjas as their eyes widened in shock. Fujin's vacuum slash cut through whatever was remaining off the wall and continued forward. Every ninja who was in its way, irrespective of which village they belonged to, stopped fighting and scurried to dodge the incoming vacuum slash. In a moment, the war happening at that side of the arena paused entirely. The ninjas fighting in the stadium gulped and thought, fortunately that attack wasn't fired in this direction, otherwise the death toll would have been ridiculous. The stadium still had a lot of civilians and genins who had been knocked unconscious by Kabuto's genjutsu. In fact, they were the main reason why the Suna and Oto ninjas were able to last for so long. Whenever the Konoha ninjas got overbearing, they would attack the unconscious Konoha citizens, forcing Konoha ninjas to go on the defensive. Of course, the Suna and Oto ninjas didn't dare to overdo it. In fact, only a couple dozen civilians had died due to this tactic. The reason for such low losses was that Suna and Oto ninjas knew that they'd be annihilated in no time if Konoha ninjas didn't have to defend them and focused entirely on eliminating the enemy. Outside the arena, a Senju Jounin crawled out of the ground and muttered fearfully, "Fortunately, we were very far away from their battle. Otherwise, there was no way we could have dodged the sharp wind blades around that vacuum slash." He saw a glimpse of Fujin and Sakumo engaging in another intense clash. The entire area around them was being bombarded in lightning strikes, wind blades, and vacuum bullets. He muttered, "These two are nuts." As expected of the White Fang and the Spectral Swordsman, a battle between the two of them would be legendary. Similar thoughts ran through the minds of everyone who was forced to dodge Fujin's attack. The Suna and Konoha ninjas began fighting again, but they continued moving away from the arena as they battled. None of them wanted to be in the way of another of Fujin's attacks. As they fought, Fujin felt like the battle was becoming a deadlock. He realized, ever since I used the vacuum slash, his fighting style changed. He is no longer trying to kill me, but seems content in just tying me down. Fujin immediately understood that this was Orochimaru's doing. He analyzed, even though I'm stronger and faster, sealing him will be very difficult. He uses terrifying ranged lightning jutsus whenever I'm about to close in on him. If I attack from a range, he just dodges everything. and he escapes whenever I turn my cloak into the domain. Under normal circumstances, I could have engaged in a battle of chakra reserves. However, I can't do that against an Edo Tensei." A frown appeared on his face as he concluded, "The only way I can force him is with my Fuin battlefield. However, it won't be enough either. He'll still keep me occupied for a long time. The only technique with which I can win quickly is the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. However, Flying Thunder God Jutsu was one of Fujin's most important secrets. While he could turn the tides of the battlefield easily with it, it posed a great risk. Fujin didn't dare to underestimate the intelligence of Hiruzen and Shikaku. Once they know that Fujin knew this technique, then several questions would arise about what he did in the Land of Lightning. While they still wouldn't have any proof to conclude that Fujin was Akuro, they would begin linking the two. Considering the fact that Akuro had attacked Root when Danzo was creating trouble for Fujin, it was even riskier. As such, Fujin didn't want to show this card just yet. Combined with the fact that changing the tide of the battlefield wasn't necessarily advantageous for Fujin, he decided against using the technique. Noticing that Fujin had slowed down, Sakumo riled his chakra, causing several heads to turn. His right hand began glowing white due to highly concentrated white lightning, while his left hand was covered in dark winds. Fujin carefully observed, Yin lightning and Yang wind. Will this be another combination jutsu? Sakumo slammed the two palms together, almost as if he were praying. The highly concentrated chakra around both his palms merged as a hurricane began forming around him. In the blink of an eye, a strong hurricane formed with Sakumo at the center. However, it wasn't an ordinary hurricane. The hurricane oscillated between flashing a bright white light, which blinded anyone who looked at it, to immediately becoming completely dark. It signified the contrasting elements inside it, which were somehow perfectly balanced to allow such a jutsu to exist. As it expanded towards Fujin, he chuckled and thought, "Hee, this bastard! He is even better at merging Yang chakra with wind than me. Not to mention, he just used a jutsu containing lightning, wind, yin, and Yang chakra at the same time. Now I wish even more that I could have fought him at his prime." Fujin weaved a hand seal as a mini hurricane began forming around his left forearm. He analyzed. It looks like the battle intelligence of a reanimated ninja decreases considerably once his will is suppressed. As impressive as this jutsu is, Sakumo should have understood that large-scale wind jutsus don't work against me. Fujin punched the ground with his full strength. Deep cracks appeared in the ground. As they continued expanding, the ground began transforming into a swamp. The hurricane around Fujin's left forearm entered the swamp, and soon a second hurricane appeared. Unlike Sakumo's hurricane, this one was made of winds and dirt. It was a combination jutsu using Fujin's hurricane fist and the swamp of the underground jutsu. Fujin called it the swamp hurricane jutsu. The battlefield came to a standstill once again as everyone looked at the two hurricanes in shock. One was flashing continuously while the other was brown in color due to the swamp. What the hell? How did such gigantic hurricanes appear out of nowhere? That's Flashing Hurricane, the cursed jutsu of the White Fang. Hundreds of Suna ninjas died to that technique. Will Councilman Fujin be fine? Why did he use an earth jutsu? Suna ninjas watched hatefully while the Konoha ninjas became worried. The Flashing Hurricane and the Swamp Hurricane finally met. The eyes of the Konoha ninjas widened as the Flashing Hurricane easily overpowered the Swamp Hurricane. Chapter 735, Battles Within a Battle. In the arena, which was supposed to be the battlefield for deciding which genin was good enough to be promoted, two massive hurricanes, created by two rank S ninjas, clashed. In the blink of an eye, it became obvious that Sakumo's attack had a huge advantage over Fujin's counterattack. The Konoha ninjas became worried, but there wasn't a hint of emotion on Fujin's face. In fact, he had pretty much expected it. His jutsu paled in comparison to Sakumo's attack. Not only had he not strengthened his elements with yin and yang chakras, he hadn't even poured a quarter of the chakra Sakumo poured into his jutsu. While ordinary ninjas couldn't see the difference, the stronger ones and sensors immediately noticed this anomaly and wondered what he was up to. As the Flashing Hurricane entered into the Swamp Hurricane, the lightning sparks began eroding the swamp. However, even though the swamp was being eroded, it started consuming the electrical energy within the Flashing Hurricane. At the same time, the winds in the Swamp Hurricane infiltrated into the Flashing Hurricane. Even though Sakumo's winds were enhanced by Yang Chakra and he was better than Fujin in this aspect, Sakumo couldn't compare with Fujin in terms of control over the winds. Sakumo immediately resisted Fujin's attempt to wrestle control over the Flashing Hurricane. This created a peculiar situation. On the surface, it looked like Sakumo's jutsu was overwhelming Fujin. However, the real battle was being fought over the control of Sakumo's jutsu, and the more electrical energy was consumed by the swamp, the bigger Fujin's advantage got. Along with this clash, there was another aspect that almost everyone missed. While everyone's attention was focused on the hurricanes, the ground underneath continued converting into swamps and expanding continuously. Had he been conscious, Sakumo would have spotted it very easily. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. By the time he realized, the swamp had expanded up to just a few meters away from him. Fujin chuckled and thought, finally he noticed it. Unfortunately, it's too late. Suddenly, a large muddy dragon appeared from the swamp and lunged at Sakumo. Sakumo immediately bombarded it with lightning, neutralizing it instantly. However, behind the swamp dragon was another smaller hurricane that rose from the swamp. This move caught Sakumo off guard. Fujin smirked while thinking, even though my combination jutsu isn't as strong as yours, this is the true essence of my jutsu. Due to the high amount of wind chakra I poured into it, I can spontaneously start hurricanes from the swamp. While it has its limits, it is plenty to deal with most ninjas. Now then, how will you defend from this? Sakumo's position became extremely vulnerable. Despite facing just one opponent, he was fighting 3 battles simultaneously. The first and the most apparent was the clash of the 2 hurricanes, where Fujin had successfully slowed down Sakumo's offensive. The second was the battle to maintain control of the flashing hurricane, which was the most decisive battle. And now he had to deal with the new hurricane, which flowed in the opposite direction of his flashing hurricane and continuously reduced its strength while posing a danger to Sakumo. Despite seemingly losing the initial clash, Fujin gained an overwhelming advantage over Sakumo. Instead of defeating Fujin, Sakumo's terrifying jutsu provided Fujin with a chance to break the deadlock and win the battle. A wide grin appeared on Fujin's face as the 3 factors continued increasing his advantage. In just half a minute, Sakumo seemed unable to hold on. Fujin extended his arm forward and muttered to himself, "It's over. Once I gain control of his winds, I can create a new wind domain with it. Sakumo won't be able to escape." His eyes suddenly widened. He quickly dispersed his wind cloak, which transformed into winds and moved very quickly as he cursed, "Shit! Is he aiming to kill everyone here?" When he realized that he had lost the exchange and was about to be trapped inside his own jutsu, Sakumo simply exploded all the lightning chakra that was still in the flashing hurricane. Even though the explosion wouldn't harm Fujin much, it would harm most of the unconscious people and even the ninjas in and around the stadium. In the worst-case scenario, thousands of civilians and over 100 ninjas might die. Both Konoha and Suna ninjas became fearful of sensing the massive explosion. The flashing hurricane collapsed due to the explosion, and so did Fujin's swamp hurricane, which couldn't withstand the explosion. Even the swamp in the ground was ruined to a great extent. To everyone's horror, the explosion spread towards the stadium. Thankfully, winds appeared between the explosion and the stadium, intercepting the lightning charges and shockwaves. As they passed through the winds absorbed the shockwaves and neutralized most of the lightning charges. In the end, the people in the stadium only felt a breeze and harmless static currents. While the ninjas were relieved, Fujin's expression let out a sigh and muttered, "To fall prey to this tactic, that's humiliating." Even though he was unharmed, it was ironic that he was at the receiving end of a tactic that he loved using. Sakumo held the civilians in the stadium hostage to force Fujin to give up his advantage. While Fujin didn't particularly care about their lives and focusing on sealing Sakumo might have been better for the war, he couldn't just stand and let thousands die. It would allow the ones who find him as an eyesore to target him politically. Not knowing whether Hiruzen would die or change his fate, Fujin didn't want to deal with such a headache. Fujin analyzed, along with holding the people hostage, it was also a suicidal attack. Had he been alive, he would have been gravely injured. However, he'll just heal up now. As Fujin predicted, Sakumo took heavy damage from the explosions too. However, he regenerated even before Fujin could take any advantage of his injuries. The battlefield was reset as it was earlier with one major change. Sakumo's chakra reserves were still full, while Fujin had expended his wind cloak. In another case of irony, it was Fujin who was being limited by his chakra reserves. Orochimaru quickly caught on to this detail. He chuckled and asked, "Are you still counting on external help, Sensei? Even if that kid defeats Sakumo, he'll be all out of chakra, and if you recall Jirya, my summons will destroy Konoha." Haha! Hiruzen had a serious expression but became confused when Orochimaru suddenly stopped laughing and a dumbfounded expression appeared on his face. He couldn't help but wonder what happened for his expression to change so drastically. He wasn't the only confused person. Orochimaru was even more confused as he wondered, what the hell, why did all my summons suddenly go back? The time that Sakumo blew up his jutsu matched with the time when the giant snake blew up in the Ryucha cave. As such, Orochimaru received bad news right after he received good news. He realized, without my summons, Jiraiya will come here. Even though this stadium is far from the village, he'll come here in around 5 minutes. This will be tricky. He quickly analyzed. On second thought, it may not be a bad thing, though I won't be able to give Sensei the ending I want him to get. I can kill both Jiraiya and Fujin along with Sensei. Konoha would truly be finished then. Orochimaru immediately intensified his attack and joined up forces with the 2 former Hokage to kill Hiruzen. Hiruzen noticed the change and analyzed. Something must have happened to force him to attack so fiercely. Even though I don't know what it is, it should be advantageous for me. I'll continue stalling for time. Even if Fujin gets exhausted, the Suna ninjas won't be able to last for long. As long as I don't fall, Konoha will win the war. Hiruzen changed his fighting style and became completely defensive. He blocked and dodged any attacks his former student and teachers threw at him while spending his chakra minimally. Even though the arena was covered in dust, Fujin and Sakumo were looking in each other's direction. Fujin thought, it looks like I won't be able to reinforce Hiruzen after all. In the end, Orochimaru's arrangements were enough to ensure that I'll be tied down. Fujin was about to go on the offensive once again, but suddenly stopped. Lightning release, lightning hound jutsu, water release, great waterfall jutsu. Fujin turned his head and saw Kakashi's lightning jutsu merging with Renjiro's water jutsu and moving towards Sakumo at a great speed. Sakumo immediately retreated but was engaged by Guy in an intense taijutsu battle. Renjiro flickered in front of Fujin and said without taking his eyes off Sakumo, dealing with him will take a long time. Unfortunately, time is not a luxury we have for now. I'm not sure how long the old man can hang on. We'll hold him back, you reinforce the old man. Chapter 736, Tying Up the Loose Ends. We'll hold him back, you reinforce the old man, Renjiro said without taking his eyes off Sakumo. Fujin asked unsurely, are you sure? He might not be at his peak, but his strength is extremely terrifying. Kakashi answered, don't worry, even though Orochimaru is controlling him, my father is still restraining a considerable amount of strength. Though I'm not confident in sealing him, we'll be able to hold him back. Renjiro added, besides, don't forget we still have Guy with us. If needed, he can settle the situation, so leave him to us. You and Hoka deal with the barrier and Orochimaru. Kakashi and Renjiro's reasoning was completely sound. Fujin didn't have anything to say against it. He replied, all right, be careful. Renjiro replied, you two stay careful as well. Who knows what else that snake is hiding? Renjiro's initial idea was to let Fujin deal with Sakumo while they go to help Hiruzen. However, Renjiro wasn't sure whether they'd be able to deal with any more hidden cards that Orochimaru might have. Hence, he decided to do the opposite. Even though Fujin's chakra was running low, he still had the best chance to deal with Orochimaru's schemes. Fujin and Hoka nodded and both flickered away. Orochimaru noticed it and had Sakumo go all out, but Guy, Kakashi and Renjiro managed to hold him back while Fujin and Hoka moved towards the barrier. In a matter of moments, the situation changed drastically. Hiruzen, who had been fighting a lone battle, now had 2 rank S ninjas coming to his aid. Even though Fujin had been through several battles and Jiraiya was still a bit away, the situation had become extremely favorable for Konoha. Yet, Orochimaru continued battling without showing any signs of retreat. As he moved, Fujin thought, it looks like I'll be reinforcing the old fox after all. Tusk, he is really strong though, undoubtedly far stronger than what he was shown to be in the original story. Even though Hashirama and Tabarama are nowhere near their full strength, being able to block the 2 of them along with Orochimaru for so long without taking a single injury is remarkable. I wonder how strong he was in his prime. What's the plan, Fujin? Hoka asked. Fujin replied, I'll just bombard the barrier and go for Orochimaru's head. You take out those 4 ninjas maintaining the barrier and then act according to the situation. But first, the wind cloak reappeared around Fujin's body as he disappeared from Hoka's side. In the stadium, an intense battle was taking place. A special feature of this particular battle was that none of the unconscious audience was harmed. Instead, the bodies of more than a dozen dead Konoha jounins lay around. One of the Konoha ninjas frowned and said, shit, he's too strong, how do we deal with him? Needless to say, they were facing the reanimated Kabuto. As strong as they were, they didn't stand a chance against Kabuto. They were about to attack again when they suddenly stopped. Kabuto's eyes widened and he launched several shurikens behind him instinctively. Unfortunately, all of them missed and he saw a fist covered in a mini hurricane heading straight for him. Fujin thought, As expected, Orochimaru had DNA samples of this troublesome fellow. Oh well, let me see whether your healing can keep up with my hurricane fist. Kabuto immediately cursed as he retreated. Shit, why is he focusing on me? Unfortunately for him, winds blasted behind Fujin as he appeared right on top of Kabuto and punched his head. The hurricane around his forearm quickly engulfed Kabuto and began slicing him up. Kabuto tried to heal the damage, but neither his healing nor the regeneration factor of the Edo Tensei Jutsu could keep up with the barrage of wind blades cutting him up. Kabuto grimly thought, I can't keep up. What the hell is this jutsu? Shit, if I lose my consciousness. Within a few seconds, his body lost all features and instead looked like an artwork of scars. Ibiki, who watched the scene, thought, though it is gruesome, that jutsu will be very good at torturing if its power is controlled. For a moment, he felt that Fujin could be a perfect fit for his department. However, he threw that thought out of his mind on recalling how troublesome he was. Fujin's left palm landed on whatever remained of Kabuto's chest, and a seal appeared on his chest. It continued expanding throughout his body, and in the blink of an eye, both his body and his soul were immobilized. Kabuto realized that even if he healed, he wouldn't be able to move. He looked at Fujin with the last bit of his consciousness and thought, I didn't stand a chance, so this is Suzuki Fujin. No wonder he could force Orochimaru-sama to retreat. The Konoha ninjas around saw Fujin using the binding cloth seal to mummify Kabuto and muttered, It's over, just like that. This is terrifying. Yeah, we couldn't do anything against him, but Fujin sealed him in a matter of seconds. What none of them saw was the innumerable amount of seals Fujin kept placing on the cloth while he sealed Kabuto. He even placed a few flying thunder god marks while thinking, let me see how you come back to life again. Now that he had the sealed Kabuto, Fujin immediately decided to ensure that no one would ever remove the seals to revive him. Even though it was highly unlikely for Kabuto to improve as a reanimated ninja, Fujin had no reason to test it out. Hence, he applied a ridiculous amount of seals before sealing him in a coffin, which also had a ridiculous amount of seals. Fujin glanced at his work and thought, this should be enough. Any more and it'll raise suspicions. Unless a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster makes a move or someone uses an extremely destructive jutsu to blow the coffin and him up, there's no way he can be freed. Fujin glanced at the Jounins he had instructed earlier to stall Kabuto and instructed, watch over the coffin. If they free him, he'll recover his strength in the blink of an eye. They immediately nodded and were about to reply affirmatively, but Fujin disappeared from the stadium without waiting for their response. While several intense battles happened in and around the arena and the village, another intense battle broke out a considerable distance outside the village. Naruto's squad finally caught up with Sasuke, who had just been trashed by a semi-transformed Gaara. Standing some distance away was Fujin's shadow clone, who had masked his scent completely to ensure that Pakkun wasn't alerted of his presence. He glanced at the group and thought, so many things have changed, but it seems like their battle will still happen. While he followed them, Fujin's clone noticed several changes, many of which were direct consequences of his actions. The first was Lee's presence, which only happened because Fujin saved Lee during the preliminaries. The second was that no Odo ninjas chased after them. This was a direct consequence of what Fujin did when the battle began. Due to his indiscriminate massacre, the majority of the Odo ninjas were dead, causing them and the Suna ninjas to be under extreme pressure. They no longer had any manpower to chase after a bunch of genins. While a couple of squads still tried to chase after Sasuke due to Orochimaru's instructions, they were quickly intercepted by Konoha ninjas who assumed that they were escaping due to Fujin's deadly assault. Kankuro stayed behind just to stall Sasuke, but was confronted by Shino, just like in the original story. As such, the entire squad reached Gaara and Temari together. Fujin's clone continued looking at them and analyzed. Shikamaru and Lee. Shikamaru isn't strong, but his brain could result in some changes. On the contrary, Lee has the might required to force a change. Though he isn't allowed to open the inner gates, he is quite suicidal. I wonder how the battle will play out now. Back in the arena, Hoka asked, was he that important to be taken care of? Fujin withdrew a scroll while replying, yeah, he's a troublesome fellow. If he interfered in the fight against Sakumo-san, Sensei and others would have been in trouble. Hoka understood his thoughts and nodded. Opening the scroll, Fujin weaved the confrontation hand seal. At the next moment, thousands of explosive tags appeared in front of him. The Ambu ninjas, standing outside the barrier, rejoiced to see Fujin come near the barrier. They were about to greet him and inform him about the barrier when they saw a sight that horrified them. All of them scattered immediately. At the same time, the Sound Four looked at the insane number of explosive tags with grim faces. They immediately activated the second stage of their curse seals to provide more chakra to the barrier. Fujin glanced at them and muttered, "I have always been curious about how many explosive tags it'll take to break a barrier of this level. Any guesses, Hoka?" Chapter 737, The Biggest Joke. I have always been curious about how many explosive tags it'll take to break a barrier of this level. Any guesses, Hoka? Hoka just chuckled as 8,000 explosive tags flew towards the barrier. He replied, "Does it matter? No matter how many it takes, it won't even leave a dent in your storage of explosive tags, will it?" Hoka fully expected Fujin to have at least a dozen more such scrolls on him. As for how many might be in his house, Hoka didn't even bother to make a guess. He just knew that it would be some unbelievable number. Teuya shouted, "Don't hold back!" The sight unnerved the Sound Four, who wondered, why does he carry so many explosive seals on him? The same thoughts ran through the minds of the Suna ninjas, who were relieved that they weren't heading towards them. Baki wondered, was he planning on blowing up an entire village or something? Inside the barrier, Hiruzen chuckled and said, "It's over, Orochimaru. I hope you have already secured an escape route. If not, I'll fix the mistake I made a decade ago." To Hiruzen's surprise, Orochimaru chuckled and asked, "Are you so sure that it's over, Sensei?" As he said that, a large amount of gold dust appeared in the path of the tags. Relief and hope appeared in the eyes of the Suna ninjas keeping an eye on the barrier. Baki muttered to himself, "Finally, Keisuke-sama has arrived. However, defeating Fujin will be difficult. Everything will depend on why he was so late. This will be the crucial moment of the war. Whoever wins will win the war." A massive explosion attracted the attention of every ninja in the vicinity as the tags exploded after coming in contact with the gold dust. Most of the ninjas stopped fighting and glanced in its direction. The explosion was so massive that even Jiraiya, who was several minutes away, heard the explosion. He looked worriedly in the direction of the arena and muttered, "What is happening there? Hang on, old man." Smoke had covered an entire side of the barrier, which was bombarded by high-speed gold particles. Several shockwaves hit the barrier as well. Both Konoha and Suna ninjas wondered whether the barrier had been broken. At the same time, the few remaining Odo ninjas became worried. As the smoke cleared, the Odo ninjas sighed in relief, seeing that the barrier was still up. Even though it was bombarded by gold dust and shockwaves, it was nowhere near enough to create a crack in the barrier, let alone destroy it. The Sound Four sighed in relief. While they had the confidence to weather the barrage of explosive tags, none of them had any confidence against Fujin. Teuya thought that was close. Fortunately, Orochimaru-sama made arrangements for all possibilities. Though Rasa isn't strong enough to defeat that monster, stalling him shouldn't be an issue. With him, the barrier won't fall. Fujin looked at the gold dust and analyzed, so Rasa was here too. However, he didn't make any move when I was cutting down the Suna ninjas. I even slowed down to see whether he'd make a move. In addition, he's waiting here and obediently protecting the barrier, a task unfitting of a cage. That means, while Odo ninjas were relieved when the smoke scattered, the Suna ninjas were ecstatic. They couldn't care less about the barrier. Instead, their eyes were glued to the massive amount of gold dust floating around the barrier. Yes! Keisuke-sama is finally here. He'll take revenge on our fallen comrades and kill that bastard swordsman. Enough defending. It's time for our counterattack. Kill Konoha scums. The morale of the Suna ninjas immediately soared on seeing their leader. The Konoha ninjas weren't deterred either, as facing Rasa was Fujin, who had been dominating the entire battlefield with an unstoppable force. If someone like Sakumo couldn't hold him, they were confident that Rasa wouldn't be able to stop him either. They too replied to Suna's ferocious counterattack with even more ferocity. As the gold dust cleared, Rasa's appearance became visible. He looked just like he did when he was alive. There was no sign of anyone having used the Edo Tensei jutsu on him. However, Fujin didn't buy it. Standing next to Fujin, Hoka had a worried expression. He thought, even though Fujin still looks strong, he has been going all out since the... What the hell? For a moment, Hoka doubted his eyes and observed Rasa properly. He wondered, that's weird. Why do I get the same feeling from him as the reanimated ninjas? No, something is definitely off with his body. Even though I can't see it with my Byakugan, it's unquestionable. However, how can that be? Isn't the fourth Keisuke still alive? Hoka's thoughts were cut off by an extremely loud laughter emitting from next to him. He immediately looked at Fujin, who seemed to be laughing as if he had seen the biggest joke in the world. He wasn't the only one. Fujin had used winds to amplify his sound considerably and let it travel for longer distances. Everyone in the arena heard his laughter clearly and glanced at him. Even the ninjas who were fighting just outside the arena heard his voice clearly. Baki immediately had a bad feeling. The remaining ninjas were confused as well when Fujin suddenly stopped laughing and they heard his words. The fourth Keisuke is dead. He is now Orochimaru's puppet and is defending him like a slave. Meanwhile, Sunagakure ninjas are sacrificing their lives for Orochimaru, the person who killed their leader. This is fucking hilarious. Ha 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 ha. Shock, horror, disbelief, and a myriad of other horrible emotions appeared on the face of every Suna ninja. Their morale, which had just recovered, shattered into a million pieces once again. Irrespective of whether they believed Fujin or not, everyone stopped attacking and glanced in the direction of the barrier. Needless to say, both Konoha and Odo ninjas were shocked as well. Keisuke-sama is dead, and he is controlled by Orochimaru. How can that be? No, he is lying. How can our Keisuke be killed? Yes, that brat is fooling us. He is trying to drive a wedge between us and Orochimaru. I was almost fooled by that demon. But what if he is telling the truth? Wouldn't it mean that we're sacrificing ourselves for Orochimaru's cause? Yes, don't forget that the Keisuke-sama didn't show up when the spectral swordsman was butchering our comrades. Why did he only appear when the barrier was attacked? Don't fall for the enemy's trick. Keisuke-sama would have his reasons. He might be following a strategy. HMPH, what strategy is worth the lives of 200 of our comrades? Confusion immediately spread among the ranks of Suna ninjas. Instead of attacking Konoha ninjas, they shifted their focus back to defending and tried to get closer to the barrier to understand the truth. Baki stopped fighting Genma and hate and flickered towards Fujin. Needless to say, he wouldn't take the word of his enemy at face value. However, the bad feeling he had intensified several times when he heard Fujin's words. He appeared some distance away from Fujin and shouted, "Bastard! Stop lying!" From a close distance, Baki could see that Rasa didn't have the features of a reanimated ninja. However, he could see that something was off. Be it Rasa's absence when Fujin was slaughtering Suna ninjas, or the fact that he hadn't refuted Fujin's words, yet he shouted to ensure that the Suna ninjas didn't lose their morale entirely. Fujin merely chuckled and taunted, "Why don't you talk with your dear leader then? Heh." Baki immediately followed his advice. "Keisuke-sama, please reply." Inside the barrier, Orochimaru frowned and wondered, when did he learn sound-based jutsus? Tusk, this is annoying. Hiruzen heard Fujin's words and was shocked as well. He stared at Orochimaru while analyzing. So, he killed Rasa first. The main question is when this was. Even I was fooled by his impersonation of the Keisuke. Was Suna the one who wanted to make a move against Konoha, or were they manipulated by Orochimaru? Regardless, Hiruzen immediately went on the offensive, directly targeting Orochimaru. He was aware that the caster could speak through the Edo Tensei. He didn't want to give that opportunity to Orochimaru. As Orochimaru became busy dealing with Hiruzen's assault, Hiruzen thought, "Good thinking, Fujin. This war is over." Unknown to Hiruzen, Orochimaru didn't intend to attempt fooling Suna ninjas again. He knew that the Suna ninjas weren't all fools. Now that Fujin had planted a seed of doubt in their minds, they would suspect Rasa. Any act Orochimaru put up would be seen through, so Orochimaru didn't see any point in doing something like that. Hence, Rasa, whose will had been completely suppressed, didn't reply to Baki. Baki just stood there with a stunned expression and disbelief on his face. For a moment, he had let his guard down completely. Chapter 738, Hidden Cards. Looking at his unresponsive leader, Baki stood with a stunned expression. He was in such disbelief that he let his guard down completely, a fact that didn't miss Fujin's watchful gaze. However, Fujin didn't make a move. Baki was going through an intense internal turmoil. Just a few months ago, Sunagakure's top leadership were high in morale after having made a deal with Orochimaru to deal Konoha a massive blow. Their preparations progressed smoothly. However, ever since the second round of the Chunin exams, nothing seemed to be going their way. The slaughter Fujin unleashed just a minute into their attack made him realize the severity of the situation. And now their leader, their last hope, the man who was supposed to turn things around in their favor, was already dead. And his killer was none other than their ally. Baki muttered in shock and disbelief. How did this happen? When was Lord Rasa killed? No way, did Orochi? Baki was no fool. He connected the dots very easily and understood. He knew that Rasa had gone to meet Orochimaru a few days ago. According to the discussion in their council, the war should have been postponed unless Orochimaru had made some excellent arrangements. Yet, Rasa suddenly acted in a very different manner after meeting with Orochimaru. He went from caution to going all out to crushing Konoha. The council was baffled and wanted a proper explanation, but they didn't get any as Rasa never returned to Suna. Ultimately, the council had no choice but to follow their leader's orders. None of them imagined that he'd be killed by Orochimaru so secretly. They didn't even have that thought, yet Baki was seeing the worst-case scenario happening for his village, a scenario that no ninja in Suna imagined. Seeing Baki standing in shock, the remaining Suna ninjas understood that Fujin wasn't lying. Their morale dropped immediately. Genma flickered behind Baki and asked with a chuckle, "Do you still want a fight?" Baki didn't reply. He retrieved a kunai and launched it into the sky. The kunai exploded, releasing red smoke and a strange noise. In an instant, every Suna ninja in and around the arena heard the voice and looked in the direction of the explosion. Their pupils dilated as soon as they saw the smoke. Without a single word, every Suna ninja stopped fighting and retreated. They only kept an eye on possible attacks from Konoha ninjas while they left the battlefield. Leading them was none other than Baki. The Konoha ninjas chased for a few seconds but stopped, realizing that Suna ninjas had no intention of stopping. For a moment, most of the battle ceased. Of course, that didn't mean that the Suna ninjas were happy. Instead, terrified questions were heard throughout their forces. "Why are we retreating? Don't tell me. Is what he said true? Is Lord Rasa dead?" "No, how can that be? Baki, what happened? Didn't you get a close look at Keisuke-sama?" With a grim expression on his face, Baki answered, "Keisuke-sama is dead. Orochimaru reanimated him like the White Fang and others. That bloody snake betrayed us." Silence spread among the ranks of Suna ninjas. None of them could believe what they heard. Nearly every Suna ninja turned their heads to glance towards the barrier one last time. As soon as they did, their eyes widened and pupils dilated. Standing facing Rasa, Hoka glanced at Fujin and thought, "He's even more incredible now. He has always been strong, smart, and cunning, but I never imagined that his ability to scheme is so strong. I now understand why Lord Hawkage got him on the council. Even though he looks unstoppable, his chakra reserves must have taken a big hit. He killed over 300 Suna and Odo ninjas before eliminating the Kekkei Genkai users and dealing with the reanimated ninjas. In addition, he also left shadow clones to watch over the sealed ninjas. Even though he does a great job at hiding his chakra reserves, they must have taken a massive hit. According to my estimates, he should only have around a quarter of his chakra left. Fighting against the fourth Kazekage in this state would have been extremely difficult, especially considering that he seems content with just defending the barrier. We wouldn't have been able to help Lord Hawkage. However, with just a few words, he forced nearly 300 Suna ninjas to retreat. Without them here, our forces are freed up. Everyone can gang up on the barrier and destroy it. This war is of. What the? Hoka's analysis was on point. Fujin's chakra reserves had dropped seriously low. It was why he used such a tactic to force the Suna ninjas to retreat. Instead of killing Baki, he made Baki withdraw the hundreds of Suna ninjas. Of course, there was one other factor as well. Along with Rasa, Fujin sensed one more disturbance with his space-time sensing technique. Just at the moment when the Suna ninjas turned their heads to see their fallen cage, black particles appeared around the barrier along with the gold particles. Standing next to Rasa was the third Kazekage. Orochimaru had initially held him back, hoping that the Suna ninjas keep fighting, but there was no longer any need to do that. Fujin saw a massive amount of gold and iron dust rush towards him and Hoka. Hoka immediately concentrated chakra on his feet while Fujin thought, "It looks like I'll have to use that trick after all. Sai, this is disappointing. I hope that I can resolve this issue soon." Fujin bit his right thumb. At the same time, the shadow clone in his compounds dispelled, sending back all chakra to Fujin. Fujin, who barely had over 25% of his chakra remaining, suddenly recovered his chakra reserves to 80% of its maximum capacity. Before the war began, Fujin had thought a lot as to what arrangements Orochimaru would make for him. While he couldn't guess who Orochimaru would recruit to deal with him, he expected an intense conflict. As such, he left no stone unturned in ensuring that he was as prepared as a ninja could be. A day before the finals began, he ate a soldier pill and immediately created a shadow clone containing 85% of his chakra. As the day progressed, he created a couple more as soon as his chakra reserves recovered. While there were several reasons to do so, which was evident by the roles played by his clone in the war, one of Fujin's main intentions was to have chakra batteries in case he ran low. Of course, even if a shadow clone didn't fight, the mere act of maintaining it consumed the clone's chakra. Hence, his clones stayed inside the meditation room, meditating to slow down the rate at which they consumed their chakra. A few hours before the finals began, two of them left for the arena while his first clone stayed back and eventually ended up killing the giant snakes and the ninjas who followed them. Even though he didn't consume any chakra in that battle, sustaining himself for over a day cost him nearly a third of his chakra. Even so, the chakra he provided to Fujin was more than enough to turn around any battle. Summoning Jutsu! Smoke clouds appeared around Fujin as he slammed his hand on the ground. It didn't remain for long as a 20-meter-tall behemoth appeared from the smoke. A loud, jagged roar echoed through the arena as intense winds hit the gold and iron dust, sending it back at an even faster speed. Once again, everyone's eyes turned towards Fujin. To everyone's surprise, he was standing on the head of a gigantic and menacing saber-tooth. Hoka, who retreated right before Fujin slammed his hand on the ground, thought, "Such a massive and powerful summon! Since when did Fujin have such a summon?" Similar questions ran through the minds of the Konoha ninjas. Konoha was famous for having ninjas with strong summons, be it Hiruzen or the Sanins. All of their summons were extremely famous throughout the world, and now they saw another summon who didn't lose to any of them. Of course, none of them questioned where he had got the summon from. Instead, they were just pleased. "Incredible! I didn't even know he had a summon." As expected of Councilman Fujin, only someone like him can have such a strong summon. The retreating Suna ninjas noticed the massive summon as well, and their mood dropped further. Baki thought, even if Gaara had stuck to the plan, I don't think it'd have made much of a difference. Even if Orochimaru hadn't backstabbed us, this entire campaign was destined to be a disaster. Fujin ignored everyone's gazes and said, "Ryu, it's time for a rampage." Chapter 739, Setting the Skies Ablaze. What an odd sight! Ryu muttered softly in his jagged voice. The situation in front of him truly puzzled him. Having lived for several centuries, Ryu had seen several odd things that seemed far beyond common sense. However, he had never seen so many weird people simultaneously. He observed, "These two don't have the aura of the living. They're undoubtedly dead, but seem to be completely fine. Those two inside the barrier have similar auras. Since when could the dead rise in such a manner? Also, what's with this barrier? It seems sturdy enough to endure my strongest attacks. Not to mention, those four powering the barrier are harnessing nature energy. However, it feels off too. It's almost as if they're using some artificial means." For over a century, the winged saber-tooths didn't have a summoner. Even though a few of them liked to travel, they couldn't learn about the advancements in ninjutsu. As such, Ryu was quite surprised to see so many oddities when he was finally summoned. Of course, he couldn't be entirely blamed. Orochimaru's forbidden techniques had even surprised Hiruzen, the person publicly acknowledged as having the greatest ninjutsu knowledge. The other cages would have been even more surprised, as they weren't even aware of Orochimaru's forbidden experiments. So it was natural for Ryu to be surprised. However, since it was the first thing he saw when he was summoned, he couldn't help but feel like the human world had changed a lot. Fujin sensed his feelings, chuckled, and said, "What you're seeing is odd for us too. I'll explain the details later. For now, we need to smash the barrier, seal those dead ninjas, and kill that snake." Ryu replied, "All right." To the shock of nearly every ninja, Ryu's fur began moving and two large wings appeared on his back. With a single flap, the massive saber-tooth got off the ground and flew above the barrier, one of the most difficult spots for ninjas to defend. Of course, facing him were two extremely strong ninjas. Fujin said, "Aerial attacks might not work much. Both of them have mastered the magnet release. Don't be engulfed by the gold or iron, they might be poisoned. Also, be careful of suicidal attacks. They can't be killed, and I'll have to seal them after we destroy them." While Fujin spoke, a large amount of gold and iron floated towards them. The gold dust spread through the entire area instead of targeting Ryu directly. As for the iron, it transformed into several sharp weapons, all of which were launched towards Ryu. Ryu sighed and replied, "I forgot how complicated humans were." Wind chakra suddenly flowed through his wings, giving them a green glow. Intense winds were released downwards as he flapped them, which transformed into several mini hurricanes. They engulfed the iron weapon projectiles and the gold dust, stopping their movement before sending them back at the enemy. The two former Kazekage had to defend against their own attacks. However, that was just the first part of the attack. They noticed that following them were extremely sharp winds. Within moments, they controlled a large amount of gold and iron to form a protective wall mid-air. Hoka looked at Ryu's counterattack with a helpless smile on his face. He thought, "Even his summon is stronger than me." He just sent back the attacks of two Kazekages like it was nothing. Not to mention, those winds could annihilate ordinary ninjas. How many more cards does Fujin have hidden? Inside the barrier, Orochimaru frowned while analyzing. "Troublesome. I knew he had a summon, but I didn't know it'd be this strong. This one might be able to go up against Manda. Interesting. I wonder how many more surprises you'll give me, Suzuki Fujin." The Konoha ninjas were impressed as well. However, they stopped watching and ganged up on the few remaining Odo ninjas in the stadium. Without the Suna ninjas, the Odo ninjas were heavily outnumbered. Under the ruthless assault of Konoha ninjas, they began dropping like flies. The Kazekage's iron gold wall stopped their own attacks before weathering the sharp winds. Even though several scars appeared on the wall and it broke in several spots, none of the attacks reached the barrier. However, Ryu had expected it. In fact, even if they didn't block the attack, it wouldn't have done much harm to the barrier. It was merely a distraction so that his real attack would hit the barrier. Ryu opened his mouth wide while concentrating chakra in his throat. Breath of wind! Ryu fired a massive beam made purely of wind at the iron gold wall. For the ninjas who watched from far away, they thought that it was a normal wind jutsu. However, the ones who could pay closer attention like Hoka noticed that it was made up entirely of extremely small but sharp wind blades. They were so dense that they couldn't help but shiver at the thought of that beam even glancing past them. The wind breath hit exactly the spot in the iron gold wall that had been severely weakened by Ryu's previous attack. As a result, it pierced through it as if it didn't even exist. Due to how quick the follow-up attack was, neither of the Keizuges could counterattack in time. They sent iron and gold dust to stop the beam, but it had already hit the barrier. The Sound 4 immediately coughed blood as the barrier shook due to the intense attack and the massive impact. Luckily for them, the barrier was strong enough to endure such an attack. They quickly injected more of their chakra into the barrier, ensuring that it kept standing. However, their eyes suddenly widened as they realized something extremely odd. If a normal jutsu hit the barrier, it'd damage the barrier in an instant before its effect is over. However, Ryu's attack was a continuous beam. The barrier was bombarded by innumerable small blades without a moment's break. Orochimaru noticed it as well and analyzed. I was wrong. Even though he seemed slightly weaker than Manda at first glance, his senjutsu is to be at a higher level than Manda's. In the Ryucha cave, only the White Snake Sage is better at senjutsu than him. Realizing the danger, the Sound 4 continuously kept injecting more chakra into the barrier. Every one of them had a grim expression as they understood. Shit! We can't maintain the barrier if this continues. Fortunately for them, the two former Keizuge had made a move immediately. In just a couple of seconds, they flooded a massive amount of iron and gold into the wind breath, neutralizing some wind blades. In a few more seconds, they managed to create a thick layer of iron and gold that blocked the entire beam. Ryu finally stopped his attack as it couldn't pierce through the dense layer of gold and iron. The Sound 4 sighed in relief and thought, fortunately, these two are here. Still, we can't endure more of these attacks. We may stop another, but if there's a third, the barrier will fall. Hurry up, Orochimaru-sama. Up in the sky, Ryu observed. As expected, the way they harness nature chakra is flawed. They lost nearly half of their chakra. Still, he said, Fujin, my attacks can't pierce through that thick layer of metal. Usually, I would have just entered a physical combat, but it doesn't seem like a good option. Fujin replied, yeah, we have to keep our distance. Anyway, it's fine. We aren't the ones who are on a time limit. Say, can you merge Yang Chakra with Wind Chakra? Ryu replied, yes, do you have a plan? Fujin smirked, yes, let's give them a big one. Like Fujin said, the one who was under the pressure of time was Orochimaru and not Fujin. When Renjiro asked Fujin to help Hiruzen, it was the opposite. However, the situation had changed entirely once the Suna ninjas withdrew. In just a minute, every Odo ninja in the arena, other than Orochimaru and the Sound 4, was killed. Hundreds of Konoha ninjas turned their gaze towards the barrier and started moving towards it. The eyes of the Sound 4 ninjas widened as they realized what was about to happen. The two Keizuge also turned their attention from Fujin to the other Konoha ninjas. However, they were forced to turn their heads up immediately. They weren't the only ones. Every ninja in the arena, including Hiruzen and Orochimaru, turned their gaze to the sky. Following Fujin's suggestion, Ryu had unleashed a massive wind jutsu. Its scale far exceeded Fujin's supercharged infinite breakthrough jutsu. Not only did it have more chakra, but it also had a perfect balance of wind chakra, yang chakra, and nature chakra. That attack in itself would have been extremely strong. However, Fujin shot the majestic destroyer flame jutsu right into those intense winds. The two jutsus merged perfectly, resulting in an even more devastating combination jutsu than the one Fujin created with the help of Orochimaru's flames. Everyone looked in shock as the sky above the arena was set ablaze. It seemed like the sun itself had come down to the planet. Chapter 740, A Peculiar Expression. What in the world is that? Is this what the hell looks like? That fire is nowhere near us, and yet it feels so hot. It's almost like my skin is burning. Fire, that's no fire, that's scorch release. No doubt the rumors were true. Fujin defeated Orochimaru with scorch release in the Forest of Death. The Konoha ninjas discussed among themselves. Fujin had merged his flames perfectly with Ryu's winds and created scorch jutsu once again. Due to the scale of Ryu's jutsu, the attack covered the entire sky, making it seem like it was raining fire. Even for the experienced ninjas, it was a hellish sight. Orochimaru and Hiruzen looked at it in surprise as well. Orochimaru thought, this is even stronger than what he did earlier. The addition of nature chakra takes it to an entirely new level. At the same time, Hiruzen wondered, has he really not mastered scorch release yet? Enma said, so this is the boy you told me about. His summon is strong. That winged saber-tooth has very good control over nature chakra. Fujin's attack forced the Konoha ninjas to stop. They didn't want to be caught in its range. A few veteran jounins shouted, "Retreat! Take cove! Ha!" Instead of continuing to spread, the attack suddenly converged towards the barrier. Once again, the Konoha ninjas marveled at Fujin's control over the winds. Rasa and the third Keizukage immediately unleashed all the gold and iron Orochimaru had arranged for them. It began floating on top of the barrier, forming a dome around it to protect it from the attack. However, several Konoha ninjas immediately noticed something. They observed Fujin's attack is only concentrated at top. Even though it is extremely strong, defeating the two Keizukage will be difficult, so this is why he... Immediately, several Konoha ninjas shouted loudly, "Attack the barrier from the sides! The iron gold dome is very weak in that direction. Destroy the barrier, but be careful with your jutsu. Don't destroy the stadium." Immediately, a few dozen Konoha ninjas moved forward while weaving hand seals. While Fujin attacked from the top, they attacked with fire jutsus supported by a few wind jutsus from all sides of the barrier. The two Keizukage noticed it and quickly reinforced the sides as well, weakening the top part a bit. At the same time, the Sound Four prepared themselves to put their entire chakra into the barrier. They weren't sure how long they could last under such an assault, but decided to buy every second they could buy for Orochimaru. A massive explosion took place once Fujin's and Ryu's combination attack landed on the iron gold. It was so intense that the entire dome shook and its top layer began melting. The explosion also sent a few shockwaves at Ryu and Fujin, but they were a sufficient distance away to be threatened by it. Moments after their attack landed, the combination attack of Konoha ninjas landed on the dome. A string of explosions occurred again on the dome. The Konoha ninjas stayed back to see the effect of their attack. They were very high in morale and had hope in their eyes. They wanted to see the barrier destroyed so that they could reinforce their cage. As the smoke and dust cleared, a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. They muttered, "Impossible! How is it still standing?" To the surprise of the Konoha ninjas, the dome still stood. Of course, it was in terrible shape. A good portion at the top was missing. Signs of the metals melting and solidifying again could be seen all across the dome. Several large cracks and a few holes were visible in it. However, the dome had endured the deadly attacks. The barrier behind it was still intact. The Sound Four sighed in relief, as expected of the Keizukages. Even under such an intense assault, they can still stop it. In the sky, Fujin glanced at the dome while thinking, as expected of the Keizukages. Even under such an intense assault, they can still protect the barrier. Oh well, I wonder how many rounds they can last. Unlike the remaining Konoha ninjas, Fujin knew that the two Keizukage wouldn't fall so easily. At the end of the day, they were still rank S ninjas. In addition, their abilities were very good for defending and stalling. Of course, considering how outnumbered they were, it was just a matter of time before they fell. Since Hiruzen was holding his own, the Konoha ninjas had no reason to panic. Fujin glanced inside the barrier and thought, this war should be over. Someone like Orochimaru should understand this easily and should have retreated by now. However, why is he still fighting Hiruzen? While he was confident in defeating the two Keizukage, Orochimaru's illogical actions confused Fujin and made him raise his guard a bit. He glanced towards a spot in the stadium. Fujin's clone, who had been keeping an eye on Hiruzen and Orochimaru's battle, noticed his gaze and glanced at him. The clone understood Fujin's intentions in a heartbeat. He made another shadow clone that had a minuscule amount of chakra to continue keeping an eye on Hiruzen and dispelled himself, returning the majority of the chakra to Fujin. In an instant, Fujin's chakra reserves were almost completely full. The chakra from the clone made up his missing chakra, as well as the chakra he consumed while summoning Ryu and using the combination jutsu. However, this was also the last time Fujin could use this trick. He still had 3 shadow clones, but the ones watching Hiruzen's and Sakumo's battles barely had any chakra. The shadow clone following Naruto's group had a lot of chakra, but Fujin didn't want to dispel him. That clone had an important mission and was also responsible for ensuring that Naruto's group lived. Ryu and Fujin built up their chakra once again as Fujin thought, "All right, let me see what your scheme is, Orochimaru." The Konoha ninjas on the ground sensed their chakra built up and immediately prepared for the second round of attack. Inside the barrier, Hiruzen had the same thoughts as Fujin. He decided to probe and said, "This battle is over, Orochimaru. You've lost. Your forces have been annihilated, and very soon you'll be as well." Hiruzen was interrupted as Orochimaru started laughing. To his surprise, Orochimaru replied, "I admit I underestimated Konoha greatly. I didn't anticipate you'd counterattack so fiercely. I was wrong about you having gone completely soft and senile." Hiruzen immediately had a bad feeling. He thought, this is weird. Since when did he start accepting a loss gracefully? No, he is definitely planning something. As Hiruzen calculated, Orochimaru began weaving hand seals while saying, I wanted to give you a poetic ending. To die at the hands of your predecessors, how ironic would that have been? Unfortunately, I have completely failed to do it. But no matter, the end result will still be the same. Some distance away from Konoha, the genins were in a fierce battle. Fujin's clone didn't interfere, but a peculiar look was visible on his face. Of course, no one saw it. The reason for having such an expression was due to how the battle had played so far. Due to the presence of Shikamaru and Lee, Fujin's clone expected a lot of changes. While it seemed so initially, the situation became extremely familiar once again. Shikamaru tried using his shadow possession on Gaara, but it was pretty much useless against a partially transformed Gaara, who not only had a tremendous amount of chakra, but also moved quite quickly. Even Shikamaru's brain wasn't a big factor due to how absurd his opponent was and how limited his information and knowledge were about the Jinchurikis. Sasuke was down due to the curse, and could barely move while Naruto wasn't giving his all either, as he wondered whether he could deal with Gaara, someone who had found a different answer to deal with loneliness, and appeared to have overcome it through his own strength. As a result, the only one who could fight was Lee. Unfortunately, he hadn't completely recovered. Even if he had, there wasn't much he could do against a normal Gaara, let alone a partially transformed one. He too took a bit of beating before Gaara trapped Sakura just like in the original story. Wanting to save Sakura, Lee decided to open his inner gates. Unfortunately for the boy, it immediately opened up his previous internal injuries, and the boy collapsed on the spot. His condition became worse than Sasuke's. In the end, it all came down to Naruto, though he had Shikamaru's support. Fujin's clone couldn't help but think with a serious expression, this is weird. Despite my interference creating so many changes, how can this battle unfold exactly like how it did in the original story?